Humberside Police, what's the emergency?
Someone's been murdered down the alleyway with a hammer.
I think they might go for conflict.
When a killer strikes,
He died at 8:50 this morning.
So we've now got a murder investigation.
catching the suspect falls to a specialist team of detectives.
Wow, it's quite shocking.
His last moments were in this room.
First, they must hunt for clues.
What was that? Could be the murder weapon.
There are messages of interest. I've killed someone.
He was just possessed. He was a man on a mission.
Then,
there we go.
identify a suspect
That is spot on.
and bring them in.
Oh, police! There you are! What do you want to let me at? Get on the floor now! Don't get cuffs on here, please. You're under arrest for murder, okay?
Next, they must question the suspect to build the case.
Explain to me what's going on.
Separate the truth from the lies
You said there wasn't a plan. Where were you heading then?
How do I know?
and deliver justice for the victims and their families.
They are two really dangerous people. The streets will be a much safer place without them.
This time,
This patient is fully unresponsive. Active procedure.
a brutal attack on a man in his own home
There's blood all over the flat and there's a female inside.
turns into a murder investigation.
It's quite like a frenzied attack.
He's clearly doing a kicking motion.
There's no disproving that. It's evidence.
And sees detectives having to investigate multiple suspects.
I lost a friend and now getting accused of his murder. It's disgusting.
Ambulance service, is the patient breathing?
He's breathing, yes, but he's
Take it away.
Can you talk to me? He's on the table, he's not moving, and he's bleeding, I think he's been looked out. He's been hit with a knuckle duster.
Is the attacker still nearby?
I don't know. Please, can you just get an ambulance as soon as possible?
we are arranging help, okay, don't worry.
With reports of a knuckle duster involved and a suspect at large, police are deployed as well as paramedics.
529, body one back to for reported assault in the pool. Where is he bleeding seriously from?
His eyes, he's bleeding all over. What are you worried? Can we get you up, please, please? Stop it, please, stop it, please.
I've been got the pass on your leg. Listen carefully, I need to make sure we do chest compressions so we can help them before the ambulance gets there. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's really good, keep going at that rate. Oh, win.
A 49-year-old man has serious head injuries.
032. Victims are currently unconscious, but he's breathing. There's blood all over the flat and there's a female inside him. Trying to help you, fella, alright.
As responders battle to stabilise the patient,
I just got a yes. I don't know what's happened.
police focus on the woman who made the 999 call to the ambulance service.
Who is it that's
John Hutty.
John Putty?
Is anyone else in the address?
No, just me.
Do you live here?
No, just a friend.
Are you aware of what's happened?
No, not aware at all.
How come you came round?
Because I always come round.
Just off chance you just came round.
Well, no, I've already been here and then I popped out and come back.
Okay. Who else has been here, do you know?
I don't know, I'm not too sure.
Is Hutty shops a bit, is that his fault? That's it. Stop this patient, fully unresponsive, active procedure.
It looks like he's probably got an injury to the back of his head because it looks like there's a bit of blood pooling around the back on the floor. Not anything obvious at the moment that I've seen.
A sergeant has arrived to manage the active crime scene on the first floor of the tower block.
Just until I get upstairs and find out what's going on, you're right, just to stand by. I just don't want everyone up there contaminating the scene if we need to keep it sterile.
Officers need to establish if there's anyone else involved.
What we've got now,
there's male and female that are present now. Females, but they said that she's been here earlier on, she's gone out for an hour, she's come back and she's found him doors unlocked and found him unconscious on the floor with looking like he's been hit over the head.
Boys, would you be willing to provide a statement for us?
I don't know, I found him like that. I hadn't seen nothing, I don't know.
Can she give any indication who would have done this?
She's no idea. There's no mention of anybody else. So, I can ask Trey as suspect on this.
It was interesting, yeah.
Is he going to be alright, or what?
At the minute, I'm not sure. Yeah.
You just keep us available.
Yeah.
For the time being, okay.
Why?
Just while we sort of establish exactly what's going on, alright?
Well, I don't know what's going on. Can I go yet, please?
Let's sound very concerned.
So you was here earlier on?
Yeah.
Why was you here? Tom? Yeah.
Because I was having a dream.
We've got it there.
I went out.
Out where?
Doesn't matter about like...
Doesn't matter where?
No.
Who is she to this person?
Just a friend.
I think let's bring her in. We need to find out who she is, and if nothing, we can treat her as a significant witness, can't we?
Hello.
Alright.
This moment in time, you're under arrest on suspicion of Section 18 assault.
I've
You
not
don't have to
done
say anything,
nothing.
didn't they? I'm in defence if you're not mentioning one question, something which you later rely in court.
Why am I getting arrested for this? I ain't done it.
The officers just told you you're at this scene where
Yes, I know, but I found him like that and I rang the ambulance straight away. It's not me.
Just say it, mate.
Why would I do that?
We weren't here.
No, I know, but I wouldn't hear either. I rang the ambulance, you know.
I know, but we need to be certain of that, don't we?
Yeah, but no, because I've not done something. That's what it is.
That's his?
Yeah, it is.
We're going to want that then, aren't we?
Yeah.
With the victim's wallet found on the woman, she's taken into custody.
Can we speak to him?
Are we alright to
Absolute take the piss there.
Officers are now following the male to the hospital. We've got this one female for GPH. Can you make CSI aware of them? We've got the scene secure until they arrive.
ambulance service, patient breathing.
He's on the toilet, he's not moving. He's been with a couple of steps.
In Hull, a man is in a coma with head injuries after being assaulted in his own home by what's believed to be a weapon.
232. There's blood all over the flat and there's a female inside of.
You're under arrest on suspicion of Section 18 assault.
I've not done nothing.
A 27-year-old woman who called the ambulance has been arrested on suspicion of GBH. Now, police are in a race against the clock to establish what happened in the flat.
Absolute take the piss there.
The case has been escalated to the major crime team.
Want everyone.
Heading the investigation is Detective Chief Inspector Ben Robinson.
So, victim is Jonathan Hutty. Call comes in from our suspect, Lauren Roundhill. She's reporting that she's been out, come back to the flat and found Jonathan face down. It looks like he's been assaulted. Police turn up. She gives a strange account and is trying to get away, so she's arrested for assault. At this moment in time, our victim is still alive. and it's been described as an irreversible brain injury. And it's anticipated that he's not going to recover.
We're just making phone calls to the hospital now, so imminently we'll get an update on his condition.
In the background of the call to the ambulance, a male voice says he's been hit with a knuckle duster.
Does the hospital make comment on any other injuries that's visible? I'm just thinking about the knuckle duster as a weapon.
No, but he's been photographed and you can see he's got a cut to his head here.
It sounds very much like we'll have a post-mortem to come.
There's an update come through, literally just come through. He died at 8:50 this morning. Family have just arrived. It's literally just happened.
Yeah.
8:50. 8:50.
Okay. So we've now got a murder investigation. We've just had the news, literally just at the back end of that meeting with the forensic team, that our victim's passed away now. Hi there, it's Ben Robinson from Humberside Police. I need to speak to a coroner's office to discuss a Home Office post-mortem. The investigation changes now. It was an investigation into assault. It's now a murder investigation. Cheers. Bye. I can't imagine how it feels to the family. I'm more determined than ever to get the evidence to convict those that have done this.
Detective Constables Simon Holmes and Shelley Fuller are en route to interview the suspect.
We are going to interview Lauren Roundhill at Clough Road Police Station. When she's been booked into custody at Clough Road, she stated that at this stage she doesn't want a solicitor. She may realise the gravity of this and decide that she does want a solicitor. But our strategy really is to get there as soon as possible to get into interview and see what she wants to tell us.
Let's go around here, we're going to go through your rights and entitlements again. This officer down here. Would you like a solicitor?
No, thank you.
Any particular reason why you don't want a solicitor?
Because I've been listening.
This way, Lauren. Thanks very much. This side, Lauren, for you, if that's all right.
So to summarise, we're investigating the murder of Mr. John Hutty. At that time, you're under arrest for an offence of assault, serious assault, Section 18 wounding against John Hutty.
Yeah.
Recently, John has passed away, so hence it's now a murder inquiry. Tell me everything you can.
Well, I was with Hutty. I was with Hutty and Mike was at Hutty's and was having a drink and smoking crack. And then his girlfriend and Smalley come right after they'd been to the pub.
Okay, so quite a lot there, so I probably need to go back. How do you know this lad Smalley? And how long have you known him?
I've only ever known of him, Ian Smalley, like from Branzo, like he's a well-known kid, isn't he?
Right, okay. Ian Smalley and girlfriend.
Yeah, I don't even know her first name, it's the first time I've met her.
Right, so you was with Hutty at Hutty's, having red wine and crack. Then you said his girlfriend and Smalley
and Gav
came after the pub.
Yeah.
Gavleen and we're talking about that way.
Yeah. Smalley and Gav went because I was going to score, so that left me, John, and girlfriend in the flat. It was taking ages, so me and girlfriend went to go find them. That's just leaving Hutty in the flat on his own.
Did John have any injuries at that point?
No.
Tell me what he was doing when you left.
It's on the city.
Right.
I can tell you, the music on. I've gone to the lift, and the lift was on the high floors, both of them. So I said, oh, we'll have to walk up the stairs. You know, so I've walked up the stairs. I've gone into Gab's, nobody was in Gab's, but as I was coming out of Gab's ran past me and said, I think, oh, he's been knocked out, he's been knocked out.
You best go downstairs, I've hit Hutty.
I think, oh, he's been knocked out, he's been knocked out. Right, so I've literally ran down the stairs. So when I've walked in, there's Hutty laid on the floor, face down, and Smalley was still in the flat.
Okay, so this bit's important.
I've ran in, and Hutty was laid face down on the floor. I see his face was just covered in blood. William Smalley was stood over him, sat on the free seat.
Sorry, who was stood over him?
Ian Smalley.
Ian Smalley was stood over him and
I was just sat on the sofa waiting out what happened. I think it's disgusting.
Tell me what Ian Smalley said.
Oh, he's nicked my bank card.
He's nicked my bank card?
Yeah.
Describe his behaviour.
I don't know, it still come across as being aggressive.
Aggressive? Right, okay. Did he say anything?
Don't ring ambulance, that's what he said.
Don't ring ambulance?
Yeah.
Did he say
It'll
that?
be alright.
To you?
Yeah. Once I am, I rang an ambulance and then mentally.
Did you see anybody assault John while you were there?
No.
No?
I want to let that happen.
Okay. Did anybody else say who'd assaulted John? Did anybody say what happened?
No.
Did you ask?
No, I was panicking so much.
At any point in the flat, did you see any of these people with a knuckle duster?
No.
Do you know if any of them ever carry a knuckle duster?
No.
Have you ever seen any of them with a knuckle duster
No,
before?
like I say, I'm not that thingy with them. I'm not involved with them. I'm not usually involved in any of this kind of stuff. I mean, it's 26 about getting arrested.
Okay.
And now I'm involved in this.
So you was not in the flat when Hutty was assaulted,
No.
100%?
100%.
After you found him with the injuries, did you leave him at any point?
No, I didn't leave him, not once.
Okay.
I stayed on the phone to an ambulance.
Alright. And we appreciate that. You've done the right thing.
I'm the one who helped him.
Yeah.
God, I'm upset. I've lost a friend and all.
Yeah.
And now getting accused of his murder. It's disgusting.
I can see you're upset.
But yeah, I'm upset because I feel like you're actually accusing me.
We're not, Lauren. We're not accusing you at all.
Our job, Lauren, to
Yeah,
be
I want you
totally
to get
impartial.
justice. I want
totally
you to get
impartial.
justice for he doesn't deserve this. Nobody deserves it. It's disgusting.
As soon as we've told our bosses what you've said, then they'll make a decision and we'll come back and tell you as soon as we know anything more. Alright.
Alright. Before we stop the recording, Lauren, is there anything else you want to tell us?
No, I've told you the full truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Okay. Alright.
Okay.
The detectives feed back Lauren Roundell's account, naming 3 alternative suspects.
Hello, Ben Robinson speaking.
We have just interviewed Lauren for the last hour and a quarter and she spoke at length without a solicitor boss.
Okay.
She said she was with Hutty the day it happened. Some people, she says, Ian Smalley, Gavin Leaning, and his girlfriend, whose name she does not know, come back to Hutty's flat after the pub. She said Smalley, Gav, went to score. Her and girlfriend left to go look for the others, leaving Hutty on his own in the flat. She walks up the stairs to Gav's flat on the 12th floor. As she comes out of Gav's flat, Gav runs past her towards his flat, saying, "You best go downstairs. I've hit Hutty. He's been knocked out." She runs downstairs. She then sees Hutty laid face down on the floor in the living room. Hutty is unconscious, not moving, and his face was covered in blood. Ian Smalley stood over Hutty and is sat on the sofa like nothing's happened. Smalley said, "He's nicked my bank card." She then says, as soon as she puts the ambulance on speakerphone, and Smalley leave. She says, "I did not see any assault at all. I wouldn't have let this happen. I can't tell you who assaulted him because I didn't see it," and that's it.
Brilliant. In my humble opinion, she's given us a full account.
We just need to do some work.
To confirm or deny that.
Right, okay.
Cheers for the update.
Cheers, bye.
Bye.
So we've now got Ian Smalley, Gavin Leaning in the flat.
In the address. One of them is potentially then the one in the background of the 999 call.
So that'll be some actions to go and speak to them.
No second interview then,
No.
and we'll bail her.
Lauren, you're getting bailed now. Do you want to grab your stuff?
Having provided 3 names for detectives to investigate
This way.
and a possible motive regarding a bank card, Lauren is released on bail.
Lauren is adamant that she wasn't there when he was assaulted. But is she telling us the truth?
Thank you so
This
much.
way, Lauren.
It would be a bit naive just to take her word for the fact that
She wasn't there at the time of the assault. We need to be absolutely sure of that.
So you've been bailed. We need to check what you're telling us is the truth. Yeah. Okay.
The cynic would say that at the material time, why is she saying she was somewhere else? So we're going to need to try and bottom that as best we can.
Take care. Cheers.
In Hull, the major crime team are investigating the murder of Jonathan Hutty.
This patient is fully unresponsive, absolutely seized.
He was attacked at his address with what's suspected to be a knuckle duster.
Female's pretty sick, but she's unconscious on the floor, looking like he's been hit over the head.
This way.
Lauren Roundhill was arrested, but denied being responsible.
I have no one welting. Now getting accused of his murder. It's disgusting.
And named 3 other suspects.
So we've now got Ian Smalley, Gavin Leaning in the flat.
In the address.
So that'll be some actions to go and speak to them.
Detective Chief Inspector Ben Robinson and Detective Inspector Sarah Petro are focusing on the suspect reported to have been stood over Jonathan Hutty after being attacked.
You're alright. You're out by the back, police.
53-year-old Ian Smalley was arrested 18 hours after the assault for an unrelated incident.
We are behind the back door now.
So this is the incident that was reported and then he was arrested at this address.
What have you arrested for?
Been called to this address because of a disturbance. You're passed out on the floor, she's crying, something with an ankle, still don't know what's going on.
Seems like very intoxicated.
He does, yeah. You can see how aggressive he is in it.
No, your father.
Go down.
No.
No one needs to know anything.
I have keys in my back pocket.
Back pocket, yeah.
What was that?
Was that the knuckle duster?
It was just from the footstep.
Could be the murder weapon because there's been some mention on the 999 call of he's been hit with a knuckle duster.
I can't see any traces of blood or anything like that.
The knuckle duster will need to get sent off for forensic testing to see if there's any DNA, blood on it.
Yeah.
You're under arrest for assault, criminal damage, possession of offensive weapon, all right?
Me?
Yeah.
Ian Smalley has a total of 32 convictions for 96 offences. They include theft, assault, drugs, and a few offensive weapon convictions as well.
You gonna be all right now, Carl? Yeah, go on, lad.
It's assault, violence offences, so it shows who that person is, really.
Unusually, Ian Smalley is not the only suspect already detained for other offences.
So this is Leaning being booked into custody.
Since the assault, detectives have learned 51-year-old Gavin Leaning has also been detained.
At this time, Gavin Leaning's in custody for burglary offences which are not connected with the investigation that we have ongoing.
Circumstances of arrest. That is planned into Pasco House. Still staff belonging to some contractors.
Gavin Leaning has a total of 26 previous convictions for a total of 57 offences, and they include theft offences, assault, and 1 for drugs.
When was the last time you had to drink or some drugs?
In the jail.
Alright, cool.
See his hand? Look at it compared to...
Yeah.
That is really swollen.
Do you have any injuries? Right.
If he's just been involved in an assault, that's pretty damning.
Yeah. And for it to look that swollen, it looks like it would be a significant punch with it, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Having broken their licence conditions, both Gavin Leaning and Ian Smalley have been recalled to prison.
2 of the prime suspects at this moment in time are actually in prison for other offences, so that means the consideration of the threat they pose to the public isn't there for me at that moment in time.
A third male suspect has also been arrested and questioned.
Tell me what you know about Jonathan Hutty.
No comment.
Have you met him before?
No comment.
Is it a friend of yours?
No comment.
Is it a friend of a friend?
No comment.
Has no previous convictions. He has been found not guilty of a serious assault previously.
Has there been some kind of argument?
No comment.
Has he been hit with something?
No comment.
Doesn't mean someone's not offended in the past. That can potentially mean either we've been unsuccessful in our investigations or people haven't come forward.
So this is Ian Smalling. What can you tell me about him?
No comment.
And the other chap is Gavin Leaning. What can you tell me about him?
No comment. I just want to go home. Yeah.
With no new information provided by the third suspect, he's been bailed pending further inquiries.
So what my strategy is for this investigation is now building up all that evidence against the individuals. When we are over the threshold for charge, we will arrest those people, bring them back into custody, put the wealth of evidence to them, and then hopefully look for a charging decision against them.
To build a case against the three suspects, detectives must link them to the crime scene.
We're going to the scene of where the incident took place now. We're going to review what the blood looks like, see if we need to get a scientist down to interpret. The way the blood's maybe distributed in the scene can tell you about something that's happened and why the victims died. Are we putting suits on? Or?
We'll put them on inside.
Okay.
Just looking to see whether there's any forensic opportunities that we can get from here that can put the suspects in the flat, and whether there's anything there that we can potentially bring any specialists in to assist us in the investigation. That looks bloody to me.
Yeah.
That could be footwear marks. So it looks like whatever's happened has probably happened in the lounge, and then they've trailed blood out, potentially on the shoes.
There's like flicks there.
Yeah.
It's cast off there
There's
as well,
cast off here, there's tails. Does that mean he's maybe been in one position assaulted and then he's moved? We're probably better off getting a biologist to comment on that. We'll photograph it as best as we can now, and then after the post-mortem we might have an idea if there's a recommendation he might have been hit with something or weapons been used.
So the suggestion is the knuckle duster.
Right. Let's get out of the way so we can take some pictures.
On the left-hand side is a small patch of blood with what looks like a little bit of cast-off from. Then in the middle of the room is the main one with cast-off coming across there. And then down the chair, there's some blood, and then there's some pooling blood on the floor as well. There's a lot of information contained within that front room of the flat. We need to now get a specialist to tell us what it means.
The team must also look for other sources of evidence that can support the investigation.
When this lift door opens, there's a camera in the far right corner.
Literally, if someone comes out of the lift,
straight into here.
just straight in there.
There's some key footage that's going to come from that camera.
Hopefully, we've struck lucky and we will see them or somebody getting out and going there.
As well as securing CCTV footage,
Padstow Close, I'm presuming that's here.
detectives conduct door-to-door inquiries to explore potential leads.
So are you aware of what the incident that happened at Padstow House?
I'm aware there was an incident, but I don't know any details. I've heard that somebody was either seriously injured or killed.
Okay, has anybody spoken to you directly from the flats at all that would know? No. Okay.
I mean, I know, I've worked here 30 years, and flats has always been a place where there's been a certain element of drug dealing. So.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the people that we have spoken to, they've been lovely, but they don't know anything about the incident. One of the chaps I spoke to said he'd heard a female screaming on the night, but he presumed that was when the police came and arrested her. So nothing to do with the actual incident, unfortunately. I don't think you can be disheartened by that. There could be people that can tell us an awful lot.
Right, we'll just get suited up.
Forensic work is continuing at the crime scene.
Marks have been photographed by the CSI. What we'll attempt to do with the chemical treatment is to get more definition. Just be careful on the stepping plates.
They're tasked with identifying and enhancing footprints that could be linked to the suspects.
Basically, we've got this area here, and then on the way out, it looks, potentially like a heel or a circular pattern. Well, hopefully we can enhance that. The acid chemistry clearly defines the structure and the pattern of the very, very fine particles of blood which have been potentially on a suspect's shoe. Sometimes in an area you think there isn't a mark there, you suddenly get a mark. Oh yeah, there you go. So that's good enhancement. In fact, there's even a little bit on there as well. Oh, look at that. It's the whole foot. There's clearly at least 3 types of footwear mark. The block patterns could be medical boots, but there's certainly a possible trainer. It'll be a footwear expert who'll be able to identify those.
With the crime scene work continuing, the team assess progress on the investigation's witnesses.
So we'll have this sort of catch-up briefing where we are, any developments that have taken place. If I go across to you, Steph.
Lauren Roundhill, as you know, was interviewed by Simon and Shelley. She gave a full account. A barmaid at the pub, she's confirmed that Gav, girlfriend, were in the pub and they came in around 10:45 to 11 o'clock. So that corroborates what Lauren Roundhill is saying, that a group of them did go to the pub.
Excellent. We're bringing together the sort of timeline in relation to those and nailing them down to positions, aren't we now? So that's good.
In her custody interview, Lauren Roundhill stated Ian Smalley's missing bank card could be a motive for the assault.
Eleanor and Emma have been doing a real good job with the house-to-house.
Yeah, so we've done all of the flats. The general thing is that a lot of people in there are saying we keep ourselves to ourselves. They have heard rumours about things that have been going on. Apparently, Gav leaned in, he told Smalley that it was John that had pinched the bank card. 3 went in and attacked him with knuckle dusters.
I've been in touch with HMP Lincoln today, where Smalley is. I've got a definitive list from what property they've got in safe storage for him, and it does include a mobile phone.
That's really, really good. Just while we're on the subject of prisons, this morning I got an email leaning. He's coming out in 17 days' time.
Ideally, we don't want him walking out of prison, do we?
No, we don't, because then we lose complete control of him and the threats he may pose.
Yeah.
Because no doubt they'll be going around, he'll go around and speak to people. Have that date as a point to bring them in to try and nail down undeniable evidence, i.e. CCTV, showing them going in and around the flat, and then hopefully the forensics.
Yeah. The other significant event yesterday was obviously the post-mortem of Mr. Hutty, which Sarah went to.
In relation to the injuries, he had bilateral black eyes. His nose was broken on arrival at the hospital. The lower left lung was collapsed on admission. The MRI showed lots of small bleeds, and there was severe brain injury, most likely due to an assault. He said that those small bleeds would be consistent with an excessive force, probably from the foot. So nothing really that we was not expecting.
Yeah. So we've just had the update from the post-mortem. The injuries that the victim has received have resulted in a catastrophic brain injury, which has then caused him to die. No comment was made on if the injuries were consistent with a knuckle duster. Kicks and punches were mentioned. His brain will have to be sent away, so a specialist in that area can then provide that finding. Hopefully, that's not going to delay a charging decision, because that just means it's longer for the family.
With an expected delay on more medical evidence and crime scene forensics yet to be confirmed. So far, only Lauren Roundell's account places the suspects at the crime scene. The team must now focus on possible digital evidence.
My role is an exhibits and disclosure officer. When any investigation happens, we retrieve the exhibits to build up the case.
Ian Smalley's phone was seized when he was recalled to prison.
The suspect's telephones needs to be sent off for DFU, which is a digital examination of the phone. So this is a key piece of evidence. This will be sent to DFU, and what we will hopefully get back from that is any admissions, telephone conversations and text messages and anything that could link these people towards the crime.
At the Digital Media Unit,
Get in.
investigators are trawling through hours of CCTV from the block of flats where the attack took place.
Only got back to about 10 to 8.
Is the time right?
No, it sounds okay.
Adding to the challenge, the CCTV timing appears inaccurate.
It's a work in progress.
So he's Ian Smalley. And the guy with the grey hair is Gavin Leaning. Ian Smalley, he's really wound up about something.
Yeah.
We don't know what floor it is, because it's definitely not Hutty's floor, because that's not his flat.
No. When Smalley's going like that outside,
I know.
he's clearly doing a kicking motion.
And when he comes into the lifts, he's sort of giving it like a bit of like head like movement, like he's been doing something.
Could this footage show the three suspects immediately after the attack?
This is the first bit I've seen. This is just as far as we've got, isn't it?
We have got all the cameras, I just haven't processed them properly yet.
Thank you for showing that.
Examination of the crucial footage will continue.
Progress has jumped. There is a piece of CCTV. Ian Smalley's doing a kicking motion as part of that. Our pathologist has said our victim has been kicked during this assault, so that's really good evidence. We can see Ian Smalley and Gavin Leaning moving around at the same time, so it starts to go towards corroborating the account that's been given to us by Lauren Roundhill. With every day, I think we're getting closer. We've still got a journey to go. We've still got lines of inquiry to get more and more evidence against these people.
Right, back to DFU with it.
The aim is to get the justice for Jonathan, and we'll continue to do that over the weeks.
In Hull, police are investigating the murder of Jonathan Hutty.
There's like flicks there. It's cast off there as well,
Cast off here, does that mean he's been in one position assaulted and then he's moved?
Lauren Roundell, arrested at the scene, has denied she was present during the attack and has named three suspects.
Dad ran past me and said, "You must go downstairs, have it up me." Hutty was laid face down on the floor. He was the one who stood over him and sat on the three-seater.
Tell me what Ian Smalley said.
Was it my dad?
Detectives have started to examine CCTV of what they believe are the suspects just after the attack.
Ian Smalley, he's really wound up, sort of giving it a bit of head movement, like he's been doing something.
Now, they must work to corroborate Lauren Roundell's account.
Just need a bit more before we can turn her into a witness, potentially. A bit more proof.
I don't want to give you information to get you excited, but the caretaker has seen a bank card in a drain. I asked him.
Oh, yes.
I said, get CFI down there, we'll recover it properly.
Ian Smalley's bank card has been found right outside the flats where the assault took place.
From what we're being told by Lauren Roundell, the motive is that Ian Smalley's bank card was stolen and that he then puts the blame onto our victim, Jonathan. We found out he reported his bank card stolen, and we found his bank card near to the scene where this has happened. It all lines up, doesn't it? Today's a good day. Lovely.
As the card is sent off for forensics to examine further, DCI Ben Robinson is heading to meet Jonathan Hutty's next of kin.
We're off to meet the victim's family. One of the main reasons for me going is to offer my condolences and to explain how the investigation will progress from now onwards. And we had that full focus that this isn't just a job, this isn't just a name. This was a human being who was loved by his family.
We knew Jonathan had a drug habit, started early on in life, but he was always in denial. We were always there for support if he needed it, but he would never admit to his lifestyle. When we used to go visit Jonathan, if he had friends in his flat, they vacated. It's just a sad affair. Everybody's involved in this mad world of drugs, and I think when you're in that lifestyle, people feed off each other for their habits. The sad thing is, I mean, we've lost Jonathan over something that was trivial. As far as we know, it was over a bank card. It's an end of a life and a lovely person. But I also, at the same time, feel for the families of the people that have been accused. It affects everyone.
One of the suspects, Gavin Leaning, lives in the same tower block as the victim, Jonathan Hutty.
We're taking a search team to Gavin Leaning's home address, Padstow House. So we know that we've recovered trainers and joggers similar to what's in the CCTV, but the T-shirt's still outstanding.
As well as further clothes, they're also looking for other potential weapons.
We recovered the knuckle duster from Ian Smalley, and forensically it's been examined and it's a neutral finding, which basically means they've not found anything to link it to the assault. It might be that it's not the knuckle duster, so best outcome from today for the investigation would be to find a knuckle duster with blood on it in that address.
Conducting the inspection is the specialist search team, Operation Kinetic.
We're going in at 5 to 10. When do you start?
Start by ripping the curtains off so we can see what we
It kind of matches what we know about the fact that they live a chaotic lifestyle. We've had people kind of squatting, homeless people here, so I think it's going to take some time.
You don't want any like drug paraphernalia or anything, do you?
No. The irony of a murder investigation with children's lullabies in the background. When you have drug users, their days are never really the same. They associate with people who live that same sort of lifestyle. It is an addiction, and sadly it quite often ends up with somebody losing their life.
Close to finishing one room.
Yeah. So the markings on the wall are quite interesting because that ties in with a lot of the names that we've got during the investigations. We've obviously got Gav Leaning, Lauren Roundhill, and it shows they were associating with each other, which ties in with the information we know so far.
It's made a little easier knowing that you can quickly feel the weight of an item and know that the knuckle duster's not in there. And likewise with the clothing, it's quite distinctive. This is all dark patterned when we're looking for something that's white-ish. Are you happy with how we're doing it?
Yeah.
If you're happy, I'll keep you posted.
Thank you.
I think we have to be realistic about what we expected to come from the search. We don't know the true story behind the knuckle duster. We don't know if the one recovered from Smalley was the knuckle duster that was used and it's just been cleaned. And the fact that we didn't find a knuckle duster, it doesn't take us further, but it doesn't set us back.
Sarah King.
Hi Sarah, it's Ben Robinson.
DCI Ben Robinson is getting an update on the blood pattern specialist's findings from his crime scene manager.
Basically, what she said, the leather armchair, the left arm of that chair is heavily coated in blood. And the blood on the floor, it's got movement in it and then there's a void in it. Right. So he's maybe been slumped in the chair and he's put his hand down into that wet blood, which has made that void in the middle.
Okay.
And then he's come to maybe move himself down to the beanbag before he's come to be where he is on the floor.
So maybe there's been like a first blow that's caused him to bleed and he sat down in the chair.
Yeah, potentially. with the patch of blood in front of the chair, he's probably been laid down on his front with his right side of his face down, and that blood's come from the injuries sustained on the right side of his face.
Okay.
The job's been made somewhat harder by the fact that so many people have been in while the blood's been wet. The blood near the skirting board, it's very multi-directional, so she can't really say what that tells us. The long cast-off blood that goes under the table, the only explanation she can come up with is that the paramedics have caused all of that in the course of medical treatment activity transfer.
There's a bit of me that's a bit disappointed, but we know there's quite a lot of blood in the scene, so we've just got to hope now that some of that has made its way onto the suspect's clothing.
Detectives have seized items from both Gavin Leaning and Ian Smalley when they were remanded for other offences, and taken the third suspect's clothing when he was interviewed.
This is the clothing from Leaning that we've retrieved.
Adele Robbins Glenton is collating the evidence to be forensically tested.
These are jogging bottoms. As you can see, these have got markings on them, but we need to establish, have they got the victim's blood or any of the victim's bodily fluids on it? These are the shoes that belong to him. It's good when you've got a print like that, because if we've got footprints within the scene, then they would take pictures of those and cross-match them with the shoe that you have. These are Smalley's shoes, and these will be sent off to be tested to see if there's any splatters of blood from the victim. So that's to establish if he was actually wearing these shoes at the time of the incident. And as you can see on here, we actually do have markings. But what we have to establish is it bodily fluids, is it blood? And that's what we need to be sending it off for. So this is from, it's a blue T-shirt and the grey tracksuit bottoms. Unfortunately, on these ones, you can't visually see any blood at the moment, so that's why they have to have an in-depth testing done. These are the victim's items that I'm going to be sending off today. We've got his trousers that he had on. We've got his shoes. And these are really key because we can already determine the fact that he's got blood on there. Is it his, or is it that he was fighting back and that he's then been able to get the DNA or blood from one of the suspects? We've got every single item of clothing that he had on or was near the actual area as to where he was attacked. If we can find any of the suspect's DNA on there, what's it doing on there and why? This is how we're then to determine that those people are there. And it isn't just about the CCTV. It isn't just about people having an interview or witnesses coming forward. This is to establish exactly that they were there. There's no disproving that. It's evidence.
With the detectives dispatching the shoes and clothes for forensic testing, the focus turns to digital evidence, and there's been progress on Ian Smalley's phone.
We're looking at specific dates around the time of the incident. There are some messages of interest. He pinched my bank card, took £500 out, he deserved it, so fucking mate, no one does that to me. There's another one that says, I'm in shit, found out who pinched my bank card, ring me please, need to talk to you. Then there's another one that said, he ain't dead, you idiot, I just smashed him, ha. There's also other messages that indicate, why are you blanking me, I need you, I've killed someone. It's key evidence because it's so relevant to the offence, saying that he's killed somebody. So yeah, it's really important to our investigation, these messages.
The phone data provides another level of support. Why would you say I've killed someone if you were not responsible for that? Especially when we've got other witnesses which will put him stood over our victim, Jonathan. I feel a lot more comfortable about the case that we're building. The next CCTV results will be crucial because they can provide us with so much evidence and so much for the suspects to have to account for. There's a lot of layers to it now. A lot of questions that these people have got to answer.
In Hull, the major crime team are investigating the brutal murder of 49-year-old Jonathan Hutty.
The MRI showed lots of small bleeds and there was severe brain injury, most likely due to an assault.
Lauren Roundell, arrested at the crime scene, maintains she is innocent.
So you was not in the flat when Huttie was assaulted? No.
To check her account, police have been trawling through hours of CCTV footage.
We have got all the cameras and just haven't got a system yet.
It shows suspects Ian Smalley, Gavin Leaning, and a third man in what police believe to be the moments after the attack.
And Smalley doing a kicking motion.
He's giving it a bit of head movement, like he's been doing something.
Detectives have now completed their assembly of the CCTV timeline, allowing them to accurately track the victim and suspect's movements.
Cheers, Paul.
Hello.
I think you've got something for me.
Yes, I've trawled through the cameras looking for the victim, see which is the last time we can actually see him alive and well. So I've got here 22:45. He's walking down the stairs from the first floor to the ground floor. Camera 16 shows him leaving the front entrance.
Okay.
I guess 22:48 comes back in through the front entrance. No signs of any injuries, there's no sign of any blood on the clothes, footwear, anything like that. And after this sighting at 22:48, that's the last time we see him.
That's the last time, I suppose, anyone outside of the group that we know are connected to this will see him alive. For the investigation is really important because it can rule out anything that the suspects may say that there were nothing to do with it. He was already injured. We can put a time on when he wasn't. Lauren Roundell, she's saying he had no injuries when she left him as well, and that matches up, which all helps build the picture.
The CCTV timeline has also prompted DI Sarah Petro to form a new theory.
Oh, that's having it from it. You know when they was in the lift with the bottle and they were doing the kick-in? Yeah. That we thought that that was after the incident. I think that that conversation in the lift is before the incident. I think they're like egging each other on. So this is 2:05 on the system time. Real time it is 2:16:26. The actual time and the camera time, they're not always the same. So I wonder if this was them discussing
preamble, yeah.
What they're going to do. He's obviously like getting himself psyched.
Yeah.
Lauren's account is that she's gone to go find where they are. And we have a round coming down from Huttie's. They're trying to call the lift, but we know that it's in use by these three. And then it looks like they then take the stairs. The hypothesis with this is they're then on their way to Gav Leaning's flat, whilst Gav Leaning, Ian Smalley are making their way down to Huttie's flat. So it's just 2 minutes until we see Gavin Leaning goes back up to his flat. Jonathan Huttie's flat is just opposite. He just looks like he's quite sombre at that moment, like his arms are folded, his body language is quite close, which would tie in if that assault has just taken place. So obviously he gets off, and if we believe Lauren Roundhill, that's when he says to her, but he's just been knocked out. And then what's quite interesting here is that the lift just stays on the first floor, so obviously outside Huttie's. But when it closes, you can see kind of movement if anybody comes in or out in this little window. You see like a bit of movement went past there, which could tie with Roundhill going. Yeah. Roundhill's told us that she's gone into the address and she's found Smalley and still present, and then they leave. And you get to go past them. Yeah. And then we see Smalley and then on the stairwell. And then their movements shown on the CCTV time of what she said.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. Because if it is during that time, like the time frame for it to happen is it's something like a minute and a half, which would suggest it's quite like a frenzied attack, you know, just go in, do it, and then the ambulance being called. I feel better that I've got the timeline right in my mind, especially around the CCTV footage of them having the discussion in the lift, which I now believe to be them planning the attack.
If detectives can prove the assault was premeditated, it strengthens the case against the suspects.
We've got 3 people in a lift who appear to be agitated. Some of the activity in the lift could well be that they're almost rehearsing what they're going to do to our victim when they get into the flat. That puts a different spin on things. All 3 of them could be looking at a charge for murder because they all knew when they were going down into the flat that there was going to be a violent assault committed.
The Digital Forensics Unit have concluded their examination of Lauren Roundell's seized phone.
Was there anything on her phone?
No, hers ends, obviously, as she gets arrested.
Okay. There's nothing sort of that would suggest any planning?
No.
So her full account is supported by the phone, data, CCTV.
Yeah.
And then, I know you can't cast any aspersions to someone's right to have a solicitor or not, but the very fact you're arrested for murder and you choose not to have a solicitor, I think she, 100%, I'm comfortable now. She's going to become a witness.
With Lauren Roundell now formally eliminated from inquiries, will her next interview boost the case against the 3 suspects? In Humberside, detectives are investigating the murder of 49-year-old Jonathan Hutty.
Got his shoes. Is it that he was fighting back and being able to get the blood from one of the suspects?
3 suspects have been identified.
I wonder if this was them discussing what they're going to do, visiting himself psyched.
Compelling digital evidence has been found on the phone of Ian Smalley.
Why are you blanking me? I need you, I've killed someone.
Lauren Roundell, arrested at the scene, is no longer under suspicion.
So her full account is supported by CCTV. I'm comfortable now. She's going to become a witness.
Lauren Roundell has returned to provide her account in more detail.
So Lauren have previously provided an account as a suspect and now you're here voluntarily of your own free will to speak to us as a witness.
Yes.
So in relation to Hutty, how do you know him?
I know him through drugs.
Okay.
One of my ex-partners, he introduced me to him. This was about a year ago. And we've just become good friends.
Yeah.
Like, I took to it, I could get along with him. It was really easy to get along with. He was one of the most loveliest people ever. During the day, it was all at Gav's.
All being
me, Hutty, Gav, Smalley. It's the first time I've ever spent time with Smalley this. I've seen him in the street and I've known of him, but I've never spent time with him. And he was all about his bank card and all his money got took. He was like, Hutty, you must know, bro, come on, bro, you must know, you must know who's done it. Do you know, because Hutty, he keeps himself to himself.
What was Hutty's response to this conversation?
He's like, I don't know, mate, honestly. Gav has took Smalley outside of Gav's flat, said Hutty's pinched the bank card.
Who's Gav to you?
Gav, nothing to me, I just know Gav through drugs.
Okay, so during the day you were at
Gav's,
and then at night time?
Me, Hutty and went down to Hutty's.
Yeah.
We was smoking crack, obviously, and we had a bottle of wine as well. Mainly me, it was me drinking a lot. The atmosphere was brilliant when it was just us three. We was all having a good heart-to-heart. Because I've always had heart-to-hearts with Hutty. I've always looked at him, I just want to look after him because he struggles with his mental health. And then when them lot got back from the pub, the atmosphere just completely changed again. Hutty went real quiet and within himself. Gav and Smalley, they went up to Gav's flat for some vodka or something like that. Me and my girlfriend went to go find him.
So you left
Hutty
and he was still there?
He was still there on his own.
You've gone up the stairs?
I wish I did stay with him because I would not have allowed anything like that to happen, you know. When I was going to get in the lift to go up into the thing, the lift was already up on the 12th floor. So I can't bother to wait, so I've gone walking up the stairs. So they must have been getting in the lift from Gav's flat from the 12th floor and gone down in the lift, done that with Utty. So it's all happened within that, me walking up the stairs. When I've got onto the 12th floor to Gav's house, they weren't there. And I've come back out and Gav's ran past me. I've knocked Utty out, get downstairs. I'm like, what the fuck? And I've ran. As I've ran in, there's Utty laid on the floor, face down, full of blood. Smalley stood over him. I'm sat on the sofa. And I'm like, what the fuck, what's happened? And like, don't ring an ambulance, he'll be alright. And I said, what? I said, I'm ringing an ambulance.
Ambulance service, is the patient breathing?
He's breathing, yes, but he's alive. I need an ambulance. Someone's out like, no, never.
Right, tell me exactly what's happened.
I don't know what's happened, I've just literally got here. Can we get you up, please? His breathing was really, really bad. Stop his breathing. I started doing the chest compressions, which the ambulance has told me to. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2.
That's really good. Keep going at that rate. This is all looking out.
And kept repeating that until the services got here.
Lauren Roundhill's testimony just now is absolutely consistent with the first time she was interviewed under caution as a suspect. In terms of making a credible witness, that's really encouraging.
Explain to me what your thoughts are about going to court.
Well, I've been be honest with you, I'm very, very nervous. People see it as a grass, whereas I see it as justice. I want justice for Utty. He does not deserve it. Nobody deserves anything like that to happen to him.
Yeah.
For someone who lives within where this offence has taken place, has socialised with the victim, some of our witnesses, the suspects, to step outside of that and say, I want justice for my friend who has been murdered, is incredibly brave, knowing what the suspects have done to that individual.
Yeah, I keep having panic attacks and stuff, like say waking up in the middle of the night and having a panic attack and stuff, like it's scary. I see what his face before I go to sleep every single night. And it's not nice, it's not a very nice feeling at all, like, and having to give him chest compressions, and I tried my best to save him and I feel bad that I couldn't.
With the event having such a profound impact on Lauren Roundhill, the team initiate a welfare programme.
He's obviously clearly a good friend and she's traumatised by it. See where we go, see if we can get her that support, because if she's having flashbacks, well, we don't want that to, force her to go back in to try and deal with that. As soon as that comes through, we'll get that done. Yep. All right.
We've now secured her evidence on a visually recorded interview, so that's a real bonus for the investigation because we managed to secure that prior to any of the suspects getting released from custody, with the fear that they might have interfered with her.
With evidence mounting, DCI Ben Robinson briefs his boss, Detective Superintendent Alan Curtis.
So in relation to the suspects, whereabouts are they at the minute?
So Ian Smalley is in prison.
Yep.
Gavin Leaning is leaving prison soon, and the other suspect is on bail. So against Smalley, we've got text messages from his phone that says, I've killed someone. We've got Lauren Roundhill putting him stood over with the victim on the floor, bleeding.
And then with corroborated movements off CCTV in any case, so really the forensics is going to be the icing on the cake on that.
For him.
For him, whether that comes back or not.
So the two where it becomes more important, the forensics, is Leaning and the other suspect. According to Lauren Roundhill, is sat on the sofa when she goes in there and he then leaves. And Leaning, he ran past her to his flat saying, I've just hit Hutty.
Yeah. So there's just that one admission.
Yeah.
From him, so that's sort of implicated him as part of this assault. What we do know is our victim goes in uninjured, he never comes out and he's laying on the floor, and then he subsequently dies. And at that point, only these people have gone in and out of the flat. Actually determining who's done what in that flat is a whole different kettle of fish, isn't it?
That's the forensics.
Yeah.
All right. I've had a chat with the boss. I was pleased with how it was moving forward. We're waiting to build evidence against all the persons that we think are responsible. Part of that is the physical forensic work that's ongoing. If we go half-cocked with bringing them in and we don't have everything, we run the risk of not getting the charges, then being released, and then the risk to some of the people that have bravely come forward to provide evidence goes up substantially. This is the way we're doing it. This is the right way to do it. Morning, everyone.
6 days later, DCI Ben Robinson has gathered the team.
What's up? So, just a little update. Lauren Roundhill is dead. She took her own life over the weekend, yeah. Yeah, so there we are. Apparently, it's connected to what's happened. I think that's what she said in some of the messages, and she couldn't cope or something.
That, after what had happened with Jonathan and her trying to save him, that she felt she couldn't cope with what had happened.
It's incredibly sad because when I spoke to her, when she gave her evidence downstairs, she was starting to turn her life around. She was 2 weeks off the drugs and was working hard. But it's just really sad. It's like another victim for the job, really. I don't really know what to say this morning. It just feels a bit fucking... Yeah. Thank you. This job is just up and down, up and down. It seems just as we're winning, this happens. The second life wasted.
Next time.
You're under arrest for murder, okay?
What? After a coordinated day of arrests across 3 counties,
taking a piss. I don't fuck up, no.
the suspects are brought in for questioning.
Inside fucking kid for taking me.
Do you wish to account for why Jonathan Hutty's blood is on your trainer?
My father was a tireless advocate for the law. He was a criminal prosecutor. Some say ruthless, others say righteous. Yeah, I'm cut from the same cloth. I can't really remember who I was before I became a cop. It's my job to make bad things happen to bad people.
An open letter to the man who murdered my child. As a mother, I am suffering because I've lost my dearly loved daughter. He killed my gentle child.
Toronto was a dangerous place for Margaret, but she was not streetwise.
Warden Woods Park was not a place to be.
It was wild and foreboding, where horrible things could happen.
Why didn't we warn her?
Police found the body of 21-year-old Margaret McWilliams in Warden Woods Park August 28th.
At first, it was terrible. I would wake up and think I had seen Margaret, or Margaret was talking to me. And I had nightmares as I would scream.
It's 26 years, and they still haven't found the person who murdered our daughter. That's Margaret, as she was when she was murdered.
How old was she here?
She was 21.
People can be so courageous and so resilient. I can't even imagine going on with my life if somebody murdered my child. There's nothing that could be as bad.
It's important to meet the family to get their blessing to go forward with reopening this case and to remind us of the person behind this story. Well, the more I hear about Margaret's case, the more I'm convinced that it was and still is solvable.
I hope it can be, because I'm running out of years. I would really like to know.
Margaret is frozen at 21. For her sake, we have to do everything that we can to find out who took her away.
Ivan and Charlotte's cause are, I think, why cold cases fascinate people and why they demand answers and closure years later. This, to me, epitomizes the value of a cold case squad.
I've been a cop and a professor of criminology for years, and I've used that experience to assemble a squad of civilian subject matter experts.
They must approach each case completely unbiased, to not box themselves into conventional thinking, to bring fresh eyes and new technologies to the table.
Their job, and mine, is to investigate the coldest of cold cases, the murders that time forgot.
Today's case. Margaret Louise McWilliam, murdered August 27th, 1987, at age 21. Original case file 1987-36. It's the 36th homicide in the city of Toronto in 1987. The facts are as follows. August 27th, 1987. Sometime in the early evening, she leaves her modest basement apartment in Scarborough. She went jogging in Warden Woods Park. She never returned. Somewhere along the path in that park, she met her attacker. When she failed to show up for work for her next shift, her boss called police. This was not in keeping with her behavior. A full-scale search of the park was undertaken, and police cadaver dogs later located Margaret's body in this vicinity. She had been sexually assaulted and strangled with a piece of her own clothing, an item torn from her jogging suit.
Was any assailant DNA recovered from the scene?
That's what we're going to have to determine.
And what about the condition of her body? Would you say it was a brutal assault?
The injuries and trauma to the body are consistent with someone being ambushed. All evidence points to this being a brutal attack. There is no other crime more injurious to a community and to just what it is to be human than to kill another human being.
It's certainly shocking to review the details of the case, with the method of killing described in such grisly detail.
The idea here is to not mimic what the police have done. The idea is to start anew. I'm interested in your insights. You all have 6 weeks with which to figure out why this case went cold and reinvigorate it.
What do we know about any other sexual assaults that had occurred in the area?
At the time, there was no sexual offender registry. That's going to be one of the things that you're going to have to look into.
As far as tips go, was there a lot?
The tips did generate one solid lead. The creation of this composite drawing. They are a person of interest who could be a witness or a suspect. This composite was created following tips from the public about a man seen leaving Warden Woods Park at or about the time that Margaret
is believed to have been killed. Composite sketches can be very helpful in an investigation. That said, they're not without their problems. They're frequently drawn from different eyewitnesses and then interpreted by the artist. Often those eyewitness versions are also contaminated by their own existing prejudices or biases.
So is there any trace or impression evidence found at the scene that would allow us to cross-reference with this individual or other persons of interest?
Indeed there is. There was a patent shoe print left at the scene. We know the make, we know the style of shoe. What we don't have is the person to link the unique or individual characteristics of this shoe. It's a bit of a test for their ability to differentiate between important probative evidence, as we say, and what we call the red herrings or the distractors. So this is a rite of passage for them as much as it is an indicator for me of who's going to lead this squad and rise to the task. This plea from Charlotte McWilliam, Margaret's mother, is more real today than ever.
As a mother, I'm suffering because I've lost my dearly loved daughter. He killed my gentle child. She did him no wrong. I don't think my pain will ever go away.
It is a parent's worst nightmare. It definitely affects you at a personal level.
You want to bring a sense of peace almost to the family because they've been suffering because it's been so long, 26, 27, some odd years.
There's this feeling that I need to make sure we take care of them. Want to make sure that we're being respectful at all times when we talk about the families and make sure that we honor the victim.
We really need to investigate with fresh eyes, using new perspectives. See if we can get closer today to capturing this killer who has eluded authorities for over 26 years. Let's talk about initial investigative action items in this case and who's going to do what.
I'm most interested in the shoe print, how deep it was. If you can infer body height, body mass.
Put that in as action item number 1.
I want to look at the other cases that happened in 1987 to see if there's any kind of correlation to this one.
Here's a term you may not have heard before, microfiche. Antonella?
What kind of person did this? Do we have a psychological profile?
We know something about how they dress. We have the shoe impression. There's some additional facts that you can get just from the shoe alone. Monty?
Who was in the neighborhood that was maybe sexual offenders, known creeps? Try and get a feel for the neighborhood by talking to people who lived there. The first thing that came to mind was Paul Bernardo. He was very active at that time in Scarborough.
The MO is actually very similar. He would wait and beset victims and then attack them at random. This could have been one of his earlier crimes, and it would be very logical to want to include him.
Now I'm going to look into Paul Bernardo, see where he was at the time of Margaret's murder, and see if there's a connection. Wasn't Colonel Russell Williams around Scarborough at that time?
Actually, he was. He attended U of T Scarborough campus that same year.
Yeah.
Colonel Russell Williams, also known as the Killer Colonel, was the commander in charge of Canadian Forces Base Trenton up until 2009, when he was arrested, charged, and convicted of numerous offenses, including a number of bizarre sexual offenses and ultimately 2 counts of first-degree murder. Williams started as a peeping Tom and a fetish B&E artist, but at least that we know of, didn't escalate to crimes of the magnitude of Margaret's murder until much later. I don't see a connection there. It's highly unlikely that he's our guy. We need to focus on more viable suspects.
I met the family over the weekend. I feel like I owe it to them to work quickly. I can't be too shy. I can't hold back.
When you think of any mother or any family missing their child or their brother or sister, it's impossible to imagine.
I've always wanted to help people. Someone has to stand up, and some people either are unable or they're just afraid, and I'm not afraid.
I'd be lying if I said that there wasn't some inherent element of danger to all of this. People might be hostile. Each person is free to help out other people. You can work as a team. So let's say 72 hours before we meet back for, at the very least, a progress report. You all have your assignments. You all have your investigative action items. Let's get out there and let's start thawing this case out.
Police found the body of 21-year-old Margaret McWilliams in Warden Woods Park August 28th.
One of the key challenges in catching Margaret's killer is the fact that there are no known suspects. We're starting from ground zero. Right now, I've got Antonella meeting with a forensic psychologist to help build a psychological profile of this killer.
When I looked at the details of Margaret McWilliams, her murder, it was brutal, it was violent, it was vicious. Maybe we can get a picture of the kind of person, like where would they live? Would they be a transient? Those are all very important features that we need to look at in order to determine the individual that would do something like that. What characteristics would a person like that have, would you say?
Certainly not an easy case because there's not that much information available. I saw a number of crime scene behaviors that I thought related to a certain level of impulsivity, which is certainly a good discriminator in terms of looking at rapists and sexual murderers. It's definitely a medium to high risk location. Someone could come by, someone could hear the victim. This way of life this person has is gonna filter out into other things. So keeping a steady job is gonna be difficult. He's gonna get in fights with his other colleagues and stuff at work. There's probably not that much involved in the world that you and I walk around in.
To know that Margaret's killer was impulsive and a risk taker tells me a lot. This is somebody who probably thought they were above the law. Somebody who may have a long record of criminal activity, and this person may have murdered before. What would you say his state of mind would have been at the time? Because we know that from the evidence, we know that he punched Margaret in the face.
So punching her in the face was probably because she was struggling. If you struggle, I'm going to hit you in the face. And it's very nonchalant. Offender will justify it in that way.
Based on what you know about this particular person, they may have crossed paths.
In criminology, we have a theory called routine activity theory, which relates to people movement around their geographical space. We all follow routines. We don't deviate from them very often. So there's something about this area that this offender was in it for some reason.
Geographic profiling is a great tool to help us determine what type of offender we're dealing with in relation to where the crime occurred.
He likes to search for victims. It's frequented by young girls jogging at that particular time.
In Margaret's case, I think we're looking at either a hunter or a troller. Has either targeted her specifically or targeted users of that path specifically.
So, yeah, it's a good chance that he knew that area, that he was familiar with that park.
This is really significant. To find out that Margaret's killer likely lived in the same area that he killed her in will do a lot to help us focus this investigation.
The location of this murder is going to be critical in helping solve this puzzle. It's key that we get as much information about Warden Woods Park as possible.
I'm going to try to locate the scene of the crime from 1987 when Margaret was attacked here, so that we can develop a better idea of whether the perpetrator was familiar with this area, to what extent was this a crime of opportunity, what kinds of places there were for a perpetrator to conceal himself prior to the attack, and during the crime if there were other people using the park. So these three trees are the trees that are in this photograph from 1987. Hopefully I'll be able to calculate with more precision from the photographs where Margaret was dragged off of this path into the woods behind us. It likely would have been easier to drag her into the ravine, but based on these photographs, there was very little cover to be able to conceal the crime. When I'm analyzing a crime scene or dealing with a case, I try not to put myself in the mindset of the victim, so that I can stay as objective and scientific as possible. But knowing what I know about Margaret in this case, she probably came to Warden Woods Park because she thought it would give her a taste of the country, being isolated from busy roads. But this is really a dangerous area. It's very sad and frightening to know that really horrible people took advantage. This crime scene suggests to me that we're dealing with a hunter type of offender. There are features of this park that have been deliberately taken advantage of, and the perpetrator would have had to know this area intimately to take advantage of those features. I'm going to text Peter these coordinates so he can get to this exact location for his investigation.
Daniel, let's go.
Got it.
Now that we have the exact location, we'll be able to determine the depth of this foot impression, and this will allow us to calculate the offender's height and weight.
One of my strengths is that having lived in the city for a long time, I've got a list of contacts and friends who know friends and people I've come across over so many years. And it helps me quite often in my PI work. Perhaps a person of interest, perhaps, used to hang around here. This was 1987. Now I'm trying to track down anyone in the area that may have a connection to Margaret's case. Bernardo, he's a possible suspect. I want to know if I can rule him in, rule him out. About the fourth or fifth place I went to, this customer told me about someone that used to work there who was assaulted and raped in 1984. I want to talk to her and see if the details match the attack on Margaret. So did you know this perpetrator?
I met him that day through some friends.
Right.
He was kind of coming on me a little strong.
Did he beat you up at all or hit you at any time?
Threatened me, told me he had a knife.
Oh, okay.
He would use it, but he didn't want to. If I just would comply, then as long as things went his way, everything would be okay.
It can be difficult interviewing about delicate things of this nature, the sexual assault. The memories come flooding back to them, and I could see the emotion. And so was there any strangling or choking or anything like that?
Yeah, he did at one point grab me by the throat, and there was. After that incident, I never saw him again at all.
I really thought I was onto something with Lisa there, but the MOs, they don't match. Margaret didn't know her attacker. Lisa, she was introduced to hers, so I'm just gonna have to keep digging.
I'd like to look at the relationship between foot impression depth and body weight over that surface area. Coming from a physics background, I was very interested in getting more details about that shoe print because that's one of the few hard pieces of evidence we know. I want to conduct a biometric test. If we can determine the depth of that impression, then combined with its length, we will be able to infer the height and weight of the killer. We have to somehow figure out where these footprints were found. You know, were they found down there? Were they found on the path?
How close to the body?
The soil character does change. No matter how finely we could measure a depth in this soil, we have no way of knowing if it was here versus anywhere else, so. Unfortunately, when we arrived on scene, we were unable to determine where these footprints might have been, and so this experiment is a non-event. As a civilian with an academic background, this kind of on-the-ground active investigation presents a whole new type of challenge for me, and I'm gonna have to think very hard how I pursue it and how I proceed with my next steps.
Got a guy we might want to take a look at here. This guy is nasty, nasty piece of work. Suspected of and been convicted of several violent rapes. Escaped from prison in Connecticut, headed up to Toronto 5 days before Margaret's murder. Somewhat fits the MO, possible person of interest. I've got to go canvass the neighborhood of Warden Woods anyways. So while I'm out there, I'll ask around. It might jog memory, especially if we can show them a photo of it.
Right, it gets them reinvested. This guy is definitely worth looking at. He's a fugitive sexual deviant, very sadistic, on the run from the law. We know he might have been in the area at the time.
It's 25 years ago. You've got to start somewhere.
If there's a connection to Margaret's murder, we need to find out now. first few weeks of this investigation, I gave my civilian squad free rein to come at Margaret McWilliams' unsolved murder in their own way, with fresh eyes and using their specific areas of expertise. Now I'll see if I need to tighten that rein. Welcome back. I'm very curious to hear what everyone's come up with so far. Antonella, can we start with you?
Sure. I met with the forensic psychologist at Ryerson, Dr. Alistair Goodwill. He thinks it was probably somebody that was familiar with Warden Woods Park. He said this person was probably known to police and probably had a criminal record based on things other than sexual offenses.
Sexual offenders frequently begin as peeping toms. Once that fails to satisfy their deviant sort of impulses, then they escalate their crimes from there. All right, next group.
We traveled to Warden Woods Park. Unfortunately, once we arrived, we were unable to locate where the killer's footprints might have been, so this experiment was a washout.
Peter needs to not forget that he serves a valuable role on this team. I need to see him elevate his confidence level. Peter, what I need you to do now is to create a geographical map. Identify and plot in all known murders and sexual assaults in Warden Woods, not just in the park, but in the surrounding area. Right? I need you to account for commonalities in terms of MO, victimology, all the data points that will allow us to make violent crime linkage analyses. I need them to be as accurate as possible. Dania, continue your search on similar crimes over that 10-year period to allow Peter to build his interactive map. Antonella, you're meeting with the fashion historian. That's going to complement the forensic psychological profile that you've already got.
We have the hat from the composite sketch, and we have the shoe evidence still to look into. The question is, could they have been from the same person?
Monte, I need you to simultaneously look into both and Paul Bernardo. See if you can exclude one or both, or leave in one or both. Either way, pursue it further. We're dealing with a very compressed timeline. Let's get this done.
I was working on an angle, wondering, if Paul Bernardo was around. A little bird told me that he was out of the country at the time. Would you happen to know that? I was speaking there to a retired police officer that I know. He said, I can confirm it because I worked side by side with one of the lead detectives on that case. Bernardo was not in the country. So now I can move forward, and that's the end of that.
This tread pattern is distinctive to this topless shoe. There's no other shoe like this with that tread pattern.
I'm here to talk to Dr. Allison Matthews David, who is a fashion historian, to show her the shoe print that was found at the scene and also composite drawing, to talk to her about whether or not she can speculate as to the type of person that may have been involved in this murder. The case we're investigating, it's a murder that happened in 1987. What we have is one piece of evidence. It's a shoe print that we have that I'd like to show you. Okay. And also, we have a composite drawing of a person of interest. And I was wondering if you can give me an idea of what you think.
In 1986, the Air Jordan 2 was released, and that was the first luxury sneaker. Cost $100. This shoe is a knockoff of that. Okay. Because not everyone could afford the actual Nike Air Jordan 2. But it has very similar detailing. It's got a similar sole print from what you showed me.
Okay, so it would have been someone that might have been aware of the Air Jordan 2 and would have been interested in possibly having something very similar, right?
Totally. It suggests someone who is really in touch with the trends, but without paying the price tag for it.
Okay. What is it that you think you can tell us about the person that might be wearing this cap?
In the 1980s, it would have been worn by probably a fan of hip-hop. It was an older style that got recycled by the hip-hop movement.
Okay. Anything in terms of the socioeconomic background of a person that might be wearing this type of hat?
There are suburban white kids imitating hip-hop, but it was still very much a kind of African-American culture.
Could it have been possible that this was the same person that wore the shoes that was in the composite drawing?
The hat is very much a marker of that hip-hop culture, whereas the shoe, it's a bit more generic and could have been any young man.
The hat was likely worn by someone interested in a particular culture, but the shoes could have been bought by anyone. We need to keep an open mind at this point.
Now that Bernardo's been excluded from the investigation, I've been focusing on... finally, I was able to track someone down who knew him back in the 80s. What I wanted to ask you about is this man here.
It's Chuck.
You know him as Chuck?
Right.
Okay, his real name is...
We knew the guy as Chuck.
How did you come to know him?
He frequented the bar.
And what was Chuck like?
Well, he's on a hair trigger. He was a troublemaker, but it was hot and cold. He had to be ejected several times.
Did he ever seem close to anyone? Was there anyone he came in with often?
He always was alone.
Did he ever tell you, do you recall anything about his background? Maybe he was sitting at the bar?
No, never learned anything about that.
Being a father and looking into a case of this nature, you put yourself in the position where, what if that was my kid? If it comes to you later, perhaps you can give me a call of anyone who might have been close to him somehow. I think I'm really onto something now. I gotta look at more closely.
Right now, I've got access to the original analysis, the behavioral profile of Margaret's killer. I'm looking for all the information I can find with respect to the MO, the signature, or any other elements of the crime scene that will help us link Margaret's killer to any other homicides. Renee, it's Mike. I need everyone back at the squad room right now. I've been able to acquire part of the original crime file. Some of the facts in this case are much more grisly, much more tragic than we initially thought when we undertook this investigation. We know that, yes, Margaret was attacked in Warden Woods Park, on the path. Her clothes showed no signs of soiling. No drag marks, no dirt, no mud. Clothes were arranged neatly in a pile.
The family's just as much as a victim as Margaret was. If we can bring light to this case and actually get it solved, I think we would put a lot of peace back into the family.
Margaret's body was found supine or face up, wearing only her socks.
She was such a kind, honest, moral person who would never hurt anyone. And then to have this happen to her, to such an innocent being, just makes it even worse or even more brutal.
Margaret had been raped from the front. Cause of death was ligature strangulation. The weapon used was actually Margaret's own sweatshirt. It was turned inside out, the sleeve fastened around her throat using what's known as a granny knot. The shoe print recovered at the scene was actually not from the soil, but from an impression of Margaret's body. The offender stood on her and reefed on the sleeve until she was dead. This crime has all of the psychopathic tendencies to suggest whether weeks, months, or even years later, there's no question in my mind that this killer struck again. The question is, where are they now? It's our job to find out. The squad has been looking at as a potential person of interest in Margaret's murder. I need to know if Monty's found any evidence to actually support this theory. What are the circumstances in this other attack that you told me about a month after Margaret's?
It was a 15-year-old girl who was in the area, and he forced her at night point to perform sexual acts on him. He did not strangle nor kill her, so...
Okay. So markedly different in terms of...
Different indeed.
Victim MO for sure, the use of the weapon. Not satisfied that this is the same type of psychopathology, same MO, same signature for sure, based on what you're telling me now. The differences are just too prominent.
As I investigated further, this guy, it just doesn't fit.
We're running out of leads. We're running out of time. With both and Bernardo off the table, we're back to square one. We really need a breakthrough.
We're building a geographic profile of the Toronto area, looking for commonalities in sexual homicides over a 20-year period, from 1977, 10 years before Margaret's murder, to 1997, 10 years after. The hope here is that we find a match for Margaret's murder. Danny, these cases you found, this is big data.
There's a lot here.
Yeah, we're not gonna make much sense of this unless we convert these addresses to coordinates, plot them on a map.
Okay, so we're looking at the longitudinal, latitudinal coordinates so we can place that on the map that you've created. Is that correct?
That's right. The most important data in our view is the date of each assault, the modus operandi, and our best estimate of a geographic location for this assault.
There's a lot of action going on in Scarborough at this time.
Attempted murders, stabbings, sexual assaults.
It's kind of scary.
Warden Woods is kind of a killing ground. I think I found something. A data point just a few minutes walk from Margaret McWilliam. It's essentially in Warden Woods. Based on what Danny and I have just seen, I'm optimistic that this is going to crack the case open.
The victim, who's in her 30s, was found near Warden Avenue.
The squad is working around the clock to try to solve Margaret's murder. Their own personal lives are being put on hold to get it done, but we've run out of leads. The exception is Peter and Daniel, who are working on a data map of sexual homicides over a 10-year period around Margaret's murder and in the general vicinity of Warden Woods Park. They're looking to find a connection with any other murder and identify the killer.
I think I found something.
The victim, who's in her 30s, was found near Warden Avenue.
All right, home stretch time. Where are we at with Margaret's case?
So if I can just direct your attention to the smartboard. So what we're looking at here is an overview of the GTA and Warden Woods. So Danny and I looked back in all the archival records and we ruled out all homicides other than sexually motivated attacks on female victims.
Okay.
We've done our best to geolocate each one. If we zoom into Warden Woods now, we see the point representing Margaret McWilliam and this point here labeled by the victim name of we consider our primary hit.
Okay, tell me why.
Strangulation, the rape, the geographic location.
She was found naked. Her clothes and the contents of her purse were found strewn about her naked body.
That was in 1992.
Peter, who was ultimately arrested and convicted for that second offense?
The man responsible for the murder of goes by the name of...
What do we have on him?
Here we've mapped the location where he was living at the time of his arrest at point A. Less than 2 kilometers away was the location of his murder.
It's a diagonal line through the park.
Yeah.
The park itself is the hunting ground. This is very compelling. We just caught a break for the first time in decades. It's very exciting. That's what this is about.
I'm extremely hopeful that what Danny and I have found will crack this case.
Peter's expertise in analysis, computers, all the things that make him a strong asset to this team are really coming to the surface. From here on in, we need to devote all resources to validating this match. Daniel, go to the courthouse, obtain transcripts for conviction for the murder of the secondary victim. Contained in that will be the evidence we need to make a comparison with respect to MO, signature, etc.
Got it. If it turns out that the MO matches Margaret's murder, we're really onto something.
Let's get at it. right, the court transcripts relating to murder and trial. Similar act evidence, let's go.
Was found nude, lying on her back, concealed under a tree.
Margaret, also found nude, other than her socks, also lying on her back, also concealed under a tree. Next.
Police found clothing, footwear, her black leather purse, and other contents scattered around the body and in the area.
In Margaret's attack, her personal belongings, other than her headphones, also found scattered around the body, if not so erratically, circumscribing the body, as we say. Next.
Neck area bruised, eyes swollen and blackened.
Likewise, in Margaret's case, severe beating to the face and head, both eyes also blackened.
Post-mortem examination, a ruptured liver, larynx, and extensive soft tissue damage to the face and the neck.
In Margaret's case, we have severe trauma to the larynx and a ruptured liver as well, from about 10 to 15 blows to the abdomen. There's little question we're looking at the same signature, and by extension, the same killer. I'm about to consult with Dr. Eric Hickey, arguably the world authority on serial homicide and sexual violence. He's been a gunslinger in helping take down serial killers with the FBI for over 30 years. How stable a MO and signature do you think there is between the 1987 attack,
the fact that she resembled the previous victim, the same location? It strikes me that this man was comfortable going to that park. He knew what he was doing, and he would go through that same pattern of sexual assault.
Out of 10 in terms of points of connection, this likely being the same suspect, what do your instincts tell you?
On a 10 being a perfect match, an 8.
8 out of 10.
8, which would be, for me, like a home run. People who are serial killers can go on for many, many years. He didn't get therapy in prison. He didn't get corrected in prison. So I think you've got something to be quite concerned about.
All right, time's up. The evidence uncovered over the last few weeks has provided some compelling information. All of it strongly suggests the involvement of Margaret's murder. I'd just like to go around the table, and some people had some outstanding action items that I think we should discuss. Renee.
Through a police contact, I was able to establish that there is still a banker's box full of evidence from Margaret's case, which means that there is the potential that with modern technology, we can access biological material, DNA in particular, from that evidence. There could be a way to link the suspect concretely to Margaret's case.
You may not look it, but I've been a copper for a while, and when I started, you needed a pool of blood. Today, it's handling something. Skin cells, sweat, that's enough. One outstanding item during the course of our investigation that was never really firmed up and nagged at me was this composite drawing developed with the assistance of citizens early on in the investigation. This is a published image following his conviction for the murder. I want you to compare these two images. Ear, hairline, facial hair, lips, eyes, eyebrows, head shape. Everything seems consistent, other than the ethnicity. We know that eyewitness accounts are inscribed with existing prejudices, biases, suppositions, presumptions. Could it be that the eyewitness got it right? To me, this resonates. I think at this point, we have enough to present our findings to Margaret's family.
How are you?
It's good to see you again.
Good to see you, too.
Good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
One of our early objectives was to look at Margaret's case in the context of other crimes. We uncovered evidence of the sexual assault and murder of in Warden Woods Park. And there are a number of striking, compelling similarities, not only in MO, but in the signature. There are a number of compelling facts that suggest, in total, in aggregate, that
may be responsible for Margaret's murder.
He was convicted of the murder of
That's right.
so he's in jail.
He's been paroled.
It's a day that I thought would never arrive. I just don't know how to feel about it, you know.
I've never met people that are more courageous than the two of you.
We were talking about submitting our report to the police and persuading them to reopen this file. That as of today, they've reopened it.
Oh, good. Good. That's a relief.
The detective who's taken this on has left his contact information, and he wants to hear from you.
That's really good news, Mike. So
that is
thank you.
outstanding.
Thank you.
I'm so happy.
Yeah,
So
good.
October 23, 2013, Yesenia Suarez and her two children, Talia Otto and Michael Elijah Otto, are reported as missing from their home in Deltona, Florida.
We're trying to do everything that we can, use all of our resources out there to figure out where could they be. Again, not often that you're going to have a mother with her two kids fall off the face of the earth.
The detective's suspicions center around Yesenia's husband, Luis Toledo.
Luis Toledo is the suspect, but as of now, we're working as a missing person of his wife and two kids.
During the investigation, it is revealed that Toledo had suspected that his wife, Yesenia, was being unfaithful.
He accused her of having an affair.
Luis going to her place of business the day before she disappeared. He was there, in a sense, to confront her about this affair that Yesenia was having.
This was all over the news. I mean, you have a mother and her two children missing. We had a large search party that people came from all over the state to assist us with trying to find these bodies. I mean, we were hopeful that we'd find them alive.
With no sign of the missing victims, investigators are trying to piece together what happened to an innocent mother and her two young children. Did they run away from Luis Toledo after an argument? Or was their disappearance the work of an envious, green-eyed killer? Deltona, Florida. Felicita Nieves is trying to call her daughter, 28-year-old Yesenia, for their usual morning catch-up.
We used to talk every day at 7 in the morning. 7 in the morning was like, Mom, I'm getting the kids ready, go to school, then go to work. And I didn't hear from her. You know, I started calling, nothing.
With no response from Yesenia, Felicita reaches out to her daughter's workplace.
And they told me that she said she was going to work from home. I called the school and nothing.
The school said that the children had not arrived that day.
This is not right. I felt something was too funny. And I called my husband. I said, look, I know something's going on.
Felicita also tries to contact Yesenia's husband, Luis Toledo, but gets no response. Growing concerned, Felicita alerts the police and sets off to drive to Yesenia's home a short distance away.
I flew and I called the cops to tell the cops to wait for me there. And when I got there, I knocked on the door. But then all of a sudden the cops came.
I was a detective in the major case unit. I was contacted by my then supervisor about a missing female and her 2 children. I in turn responded to where they live, which was a house in Deltona, Florida.
Deltona is a very large residential community. It is, I'd say, about 120,000 people now in a small city. It's a lot of juvenile population there, which turns into juvenile crimes, into street gangs, and all that stuff.
And I got debriefed by detectives, law enforcement officers, got somewhat of a rundown, names of who was involved. Yesenia Suarez, Talia Otto, Michael Otto, they were the children, and that a man by the name of Luis Toledo, who is the husband of Yesenia, and the stepfather of the 2 children, was the person that we believe last saw her alive.
By the time he was in his teens, 15, 16, 17, he already had crimes on his record: a home invasion robbery, a burglary. He was jailed for shooting a gun in the direction of a person. In 2008, he was paroled from prison, and a year later, he met Yesenia Suarez at a street fair. Supposedly, there was some kind of fracas, and fists were flying, and something had hit Yesenia. And here comes Luis Toledo, picks her up, moves her out of the fray, goes with her to the hospital to make sure that she's all right. And it sounds like a Disney movie. Here is your knight in shining armor coming literally to your rescue when you feel you are in peril. And the 2 soon started dating.
We were a happy family, laughing, outings together, Thanksgiving, Christmas, birthday. When my grandkids were born, I was always there.
Talia was 9 years old. Michael was 8. They were born 10 months apart. Some people call them the twins. They were born so close together. They just sound like great kids.
We used to live in the same neighborhood. I was my daughter's best friend, let's put it that way. I never agreed with that relationship. Since the beginning, I didn't like the person. And I used to tell my daughter I didn't like him, but they're free of will of picking whoever they want. So I ended up accepting them. It was only a 4 years relationship. They lived for 2 and then they married for 2. He started going to church too. They got baptized the day they got married, which was 2 years before the incident.
The couple had been married only a year or 2 when the wheels started to come off. Luis Toledo was not as attentive at Barber College. He was not as attentive to the kids at home.
I didn't like the way sometimes I used to talk to the kids, but I used to say to my daughter, hey, Mom, please, don't start, da-da-da. So I said, okay, it's your daughter. And I always used to say, I hope nothing ever happened to you. I hope nothing ever happened to you.
He had been associated to a gang here in Florida, a gang called the Latin Kings, and one of my colleagues had dealt with him in the past.
Latin Kings is one of the largest street and prison gangs in the country. They stem from prisons to communities. They're all over the place. Deltona, Florida has a large Hispanic population. A lot of people from New York, Puerto Rico, and the Latin King group that Semi, or Luis Toledo, was involved in is from New York, and they're the bloodline Latin Kings. And they were one of the most organized criminal gangs in Volusia County. The captain at the time, over investigations, brought it to my attention and asked if I happened to know Mr. Luis Toledo because he had some gang involvement. It just so happened that I knew Mr. Toledo very well. I was a gang investigator prior to, and Luis Toledo was one of the gangs that I investigated, and I grew a relationship with Mr. Toledo. When I first met him, he went by Semi. It was never Luis Toledo, it was never Toledo, it was always Semi. And the reason why he had Semi was because he was like a semi-truck, right? He was big, bulky, and he was extremely aggressive and fast. He was a boxer for the Latin Kings. He trained the Latin Kings in boxing. So he's one of those guys you didn't want to come across in a dark alley. And he had a very hot temper. He was very strong. So when he hit you like a semi-truck. So Luis Toledo had a high ranking in the Latin Kings, not only in the state of Florida, but throughout the nation.
He was the number one, in the Latin Kings, and apparently he stopped doing that. And then I heard he was an informer.
He was a criminal, right? My job is to put criminals in jail. But there's an understanding, and a respect for how we kind of carried our business with each other. He was in and out of jail, in and out of prison. When he got out of jail the last time, he kind of said, hey, I have a family now. I'm going to stay out of the criminal side. Because again, Latin Kings are a criminal street gang. There's nothing illegal about being a criminal gang. What he was doing was he was still a Latin King. He was still going by his manifesto. He was still having meetings, attending Latin King meetings, but he was stepping back from the criminal side. He was being more of a father figure, I would say, to the Latin Kings, and he was concentrating on his family at the time.
Even as Toledo attempts to distance himself from the Latin Kings, Felicita is still on edge over his marriage to her daughter.
People had the right to change, that people changed. And that's one thing she used to throw at me. Well, mommy, people change, you know. I say, yeah, but because they change, you don't have to be with somebody like that, you know. That I never agreed, but I accepted him because that's what she wanted.
As time went on and Yesenia's career seemed to be more successful, I'm not quite certain if it weighed on him or not. Again, he was trying to better himself. It became kind of clear that while he was doing some things for the household to help the household, Yesenia thought that he could be doing more. She perceived it as him not pulling his weight, him not trying.
In fact, he spent a lot of time playing video games with a neighbor. And so you can imagine Yesenia, who would come home from work, still had homework to do for her college degree. Her kids are doing their homework, and her husband is playing video games late into the night, not happy about this.
She's doing all this, and he's doing nothing, and I think that started to drive a wedge in their relationship. And then ultimately, it got to the point where he becomes aware, or he becomes suspicious, that Yesenia is probably seeking the attention of a man, most likely someone that she works with.
So she's, paying for the entire lifestyle. He's staying at home to supposedly be a stay-at-home dad, but he's not taking care of the kids. So she is expected to do everything in the relationship, and then the minute she's not attentive to his needs, it appears that he becomes, jealous and assumes it must be that she's attending to someone else's needs.
The day before her disappearance, Toledo starts to strongly suspect that Yesenia is having an affair with her co-worker Kevin, and he decides to confront her over this at her job.
I know Semi very well. He's a very jealous person. He has a very hot temper.
I asked him, I said, Louis, you have your suspicion, okay, great. Again, that's not uncommon for people in relationships, especially people that are having a rough time in a relationship. But what makes you think, or what do you have that solidified what your suspicion was? And he says, well, I put this tracker on her phone where when she would get messages, he was able to know what her messaging was and her conversations would be. When his suspicion was what it is, it's just confirmed by this spying type of apparatus that he put on Yesenia's phone without Yesenia, of course, knowing. That led to Louis going to her place of business the day before she disappeared and then having that domestic violence incident over there.
Toledo storms into the building and makes a scene, confronting Yesenia in the busy office workplace. Yesenia ushers him into an empty room in an effort to keep the fight private, but as his jealousy and rage hits a boiling point, Toledo strikes Yesenia, slapping her across the face. The police are called to the office to apprehend Toledo, but he flees before they arrive on the scene.
And then the next day, started the investigation. He was subsequently arrested on that domestic violence charge.
Following the confrontation, Yesenia spends the evening at her mother's home.
She was gonna stay in my house that night, but he came to my house that day too, and we talked, and I told him, Louis, you guys can talk it over. Yeah, but you cheated on me. I said, well, you cheated on her too, you guys can forgive each other, give some time, give some space. Then he left. She was supposed to stay in my house that night, but then she wanted to go to her house. She ended up leaving around 8 p.m. on October 22nd, 2013. And that's the last time I saw my daughter.
October 2013. 28-year-old Yesenia Suarez and her 2 young children have disappeared. Yesenia's mother, Felicita, has filed a missing persons report and is heading to her daughter's home alongside the police. As they arrive, Yesenia's husband, Louis Toledo, makes an appearance.
Louis was rolling up in a vehicle, and she became kind of confrontational with Louis, knowing the background between Louis and Yesenia.
And I told him it was my daughter. He said she left last night. I said, where? Where's my daughter?
When questioned, Toledo tells Felicita he has no idea where Yesenia and her 2 children are. He mentions that they had taken off the previous night and he hasn't seen them since. The police decide that a search of the home may shed some light on their location.
The cops go into the house, and what they find is nothing. There's nobody there. There's evidence of the family, the kids' backpacks are there, but there's no kids. And there's also, the first thing the police notice when they go in is a very strong smell of a cleaner. They think it is like Pine Sol. And why is that? Why is this the overpowering smell? And they begin to find some very unsettling things. What they see is evidence that something violent happened. They find drops of blood, a lot of them in the master bathroom. And they wonder, where did this blood come from? Whose blood is it? They find evidence that the bathroom had been cleaned up and wiped down. And of course, that raised their concerns and their suspicions about what had happened and who did it.
So coupled with what we knew the day prior, Lewis and Yesenia had a domestic violence incident. We knew from Yesenia's mother that Lewis and Yesenia were having marital problems, that they had been at her house the night prior talking about their issues. Yesenia and her mother would talk every morning. At this point, when we got involved, it was probably mid-morning, and that had not happened. Something was not right. And so given the totality of circumstances, and knowing a little bit about Lewis's history, that he had been a high-ranking member in a criminal gang that is known for violence, all these things were just suspicious.
The police decide to take Luis Toledo in for questioning.
We left that scene because my assignment at the time was to go and interview Lewis and try to get as much information as I could from him that would help out anything that was happening on the scene in Deltona.
My name is Investigator Pat Nord. I work for the Lewis County Sheriff's Office. And I want to talk to you today about some missing people.
My job was to get as much information as I could from Lewis in terms of timeline. We knew from Yesenia's mother when Yesenia left that house, and she happened to live down the street from where Yesenia and Lewis lived. So now we got to fill in. What happened between the time when Yesenia left to the time where now Yesenia's mother showing up at the home and having this conversation with Luis Toledo?
I sat down with the captain and the lieutenant at the time, and they were like, hey, we're working this missing person investigation. Luis Toledo is the suspect, but as of now, we're working it as a missing person of his wife and 2 kids. And when they told me that, I had a gut feeling, and I told them straight up, I was like, you're not gonna find him. And they're like, what do you mean by that? And I was like, well, I've known Luis Toledo for a long time. If something happened, it was either gang-related or he lost it and killed him. I was there to build the rapport with Semi just because we had that ongoing relationship. This way he kind of felt some trust in the situation. Sergeant Pagliari was there more for the investigative side to get the questions answered and try to get some closure in the case.
I want to talk to you. I need your help on this case. Your wife is missing, and the 2 children are missing. Are they your children or her children?
They're my kids, because I raised them, but not biologically.
Okay.
I did not want to go down a road where it seemed like I might be judgmental because I knew about his criminal background. Truth be told, when these kinds of investigations, whether it's a homicide investigation or a missing person investigation, a lot of times law enforcement looks at the people that are closest to them. So in this case, the closest person to Yesenia and the kids would have been her husband. So to get out of that stereotype of, well, you know, I'm the husband, I must be the prime suspect, so on and so forth, that was not the line of question. That was not the tone I wanted to set. But the curveball to this whole thing, the thing that kind of changes the dynamic of the interview on that first day, is when I find out that there was a neighbor, and his name is Tyshawn Jackson.
The story that Tyshawn Jackson told, of course, is very different from the one that Luis Toledo told. He said that Luis woke him up around 6 o'clock the morning of October 23rd.
He says, well, can you drive my car as I drive my wife's car over to the neighboring county? Tyshawn knows who Luis is. They play video games together. They have a relationship. It's not just like a random out of the blue person who gets their window knocked on at 6:30 in the morning and then helps out.
Ty being Ty, yeah, I'll help you, no worries. He started thinking otherwise, like, what's going on? Why are we doing this now? And then when Ty gets back to the house, he sees the cops everywhere. And that's when he started putting two and two together, like, hey, maybe something bad happened.
Tyshawn tells us, the detectives, he says, listen, we dropped the car over at a parking lot in the neighboring county. Law enforcement go over there and they find this vehicle. The worst case scenario is that Yesenia and the kids are inside the car. Car's cleared, there's nothing in the car, and law enforcement takes it into their possession. So as I'm interviewing Lewis on day one, and I start talking about timeline. It's very important for investigative purposes to establish timeline. When was this person last seen alive? And so I said, Lewis, when's the last time that you saw your wife? And he says, well, last time I saw her, we got in an argument. It was 1-something in the morning. We were talking about our relationship.
In the midst of their argument the night before, Toledo took Yesenia's phone and messaged Kevin, the co-worker she was having an affair with.
Lewis had texted him on Yesenia's phone and said, listen, hey, I can't do this anymore. We shouldn't be doing it. Lewis says that after he does that, Yesenia then goes and says, Kevin, it wasn't me. I didn't write that. That was Lewis. This enrages Lewis because Lewis is now saying, hey, we're working on a relationship here. I'm trying to make this thing better. You wanted to work on it too. I want to get this thing out in the open, and here you're undermining me. It was around 1:30-ish in the morning, and that's important for the timeline because Lewis then says after this doesn't go his way, Lewis is fed up with the situation, and then he voluntarily removes himself from the situation and drives away from the resident. That's what he tells me. Lewis says he gets in his car and he goes and he visits his parents. I thought, okay, he got in his car, he left, and he physically went to maybe where they live or so on and so forth for himself to kind of blow off some steam or just get away from the situation. But what I learned in that conversation piece is that his parents are both deceased and that they are buried at a cemetery in Orange City, which is a neighboring city to Deltona. We continued the timeline. I said, okay, so how long do you think that you were there at the cemetery? He's like, oh, for a couple of hours. I said, okay. Then what did you do? He said, well, I drove home, I parked my car in the driveway, and I fell asleep. The next thing I remember, I wake up because the sun is hitting my face. I go inside, the kids are gone, and Yesenia's gone. So when Lewis realizes that his family's not there, he just thinks that they had gone on with their daily business. So he begins to prepare himself for his day. Gets himself dressed, gets in the car, and he begins to drive himself to an appointment that he had. He gets about halfway there, and he realizes that he forgot his wallet. And so he turns around, and he comes back to the family residence in Deltona. And when he gets back, that's when Yesenia's mother, Felicita, is there. And then she begins to confront Lewis about, well, where's Yesenia? Where are the kids? They didn't go to school. I haven't been able to talk to her. You did something to them. I know that you did. According to Lewis, he's taken aback by this. I don't know where they are. I slept in my car in the driveway. I woke up. They weren't here. I went inside. I got dressed. I went and did my day. This is just as alarming to me as it is to you. I let him lay all that out. Fantastic. In my business, a lie is as good as the truth. Lewis has now told me they got in a fight.
We fight about the same stupid thing. And she's like, yeah, I want a divorce. I said, whoa, where is this coming from? She's like, I'm tired of this relationship. We're not moving forward.
He leaves. He's gone for the majority of the morning. In fact, the whole morning. He comes home. He sleeps in his car. Sun rises. He gets up. He goes inside. They're not there. What he doesn't take into consideration is that Tyshawn has now come to us and has said, I woke up this morning at 6:30 because Lewis knocked on my door, and I drove his vehicle while he, Lewis, drove his wife's. Lewis doesn't know that I know that. The perception that, again, we're on the same team, we have the same goals, what can you do to help, changes when we find out from Tyshawn that Lewis was in her car earlier that day. There's a big discrepancy in what Lewis had told me before in terms of I was at the cemetery, I came home, I was in my car, I woke up in my car and they were gone. Forgetting to tell me that you drove her car someplace and then actually moved it and then went and talked to your neighbor and we put a car in a neighboring county and that was confirmed because we found the car over there. That's a big piece of your story that you're missing, sir.
Luis took off in his wife's car, the black Honda, and Tyshawn followed at some point in the silver Saturn, Luis Toledo's car, and ended up in the parking lot of an apartment complex in Seminole County. And when Tyshawn got there, he saw that Luis already had the car doors, the trunk open on the black Honda, and was cleaning things out, scrubbing things out. And then he saw that Luis went over to a dumpster in the apartment complex and was dropping things in. He saw a vacuum cleaner, he saw floor mats, there were children's toys, 1 or 2 boots that had belonged to Luis, all going into this dumpster. The car, the black Honda, was closed up, left behind, and the two drove off in the silver Saturn. But by now, Tyshawn is getting a little uneasy about what's going on and what he may have gotten himself into.
And so when I'm armed with this piece of information, I go back into the room and I say, Lewis, what would you say if I have a witness who told me that you were driving Yesenia's car earlier this morning? And I won't forget this. He used the word impossible in his response.
Sources are saying that they saw you in your wife's car this morning. Impossible.
Now everybody knows on my side that Luis Toledo is not being 100% truthful as to what he knows. And he is person of interest number one as to knowing what happened that night. We conclude day one knowing that Luis Toledo, a former high-ranking member in a criminal gang who has a propensity for violence, is lying. And not lying a little, lying a lot.
October 2013. Luis Toledo is being questioned by the police over the disappearance of his wife, Yesenia Suarez, and her 2 children.
The purpose of our conversation was to find out where Yesenia was, where Talia was, where Michael was. As you sit in a room with a person like Luis Toledo in this type of investigation, there's a lot of pressure. Time is of the essence. You don't know, hopefully they're still alive. But as each minute goes by, are they injured? Are they in a position where if we don't get to them in time that they're not going to be able to sustain life? These are all things that you're up against.
The investigators go back to Luis Toledo with what they know. They know more. They know what the neighbor has said about helping get rid of cleaning supplies, seeing where this vacuum cleaner and all these, the floor mat, the boots had all been dumped. And he could tell investigators where to find them. And then the investigators also put pictures of his family in front of Luis Toledo. He's going to tell all now. He can't bear this burden.
And that's when he opens up and he begins to give the story. He and Yesenia had gotten in an argument, and it became clear she was either going to divorce him or move on from him. He said he separated himself from the situation. He goes outside, leaves the residence, and he sees the neighbor, Tyshawn. Luis says that he and Tyshawn come back because they were going to play video games, and this just further enrages Yesenia. So Yesenia and Luis continue to get in this altercation, this verbal altercation, which turns physical when Luis says that Yesenia somehow attacks him. Now I sit across from this man who's got a violent history and has committed violent crimes in the past. I have no idea what to expect.
She was hitting me or whatever. So I felt like she was gonna go for my face, and I went to try to grab a bush or something. So I went to hit her, and she just she fell back. I don't know, man. It was like a sudden thing, man, because it really hurt my face.
This is a man whose nickname was Semi because of the way he punched. And he always said, I would never hit them because I knew how powerful I was. And now he had done it. And here he was, aghast, looking at the body of his wife as she lay there dying.
And Tyshawn was like, what the I was like, yo, Tyshawn, she's dying, man. Yo, help me, bro. He was just dead stuck, like he didn't know what to do. So I was like, yo, she's around. I said, no, Ty, she's dead, man. She's dead. Then the kids came out because of the noise. And I was like, yo, take him, bro. Move, please, get him out of here. He's like, I want them to see, you know. And then my daughter was like, what do you guys do with my mom? I just went back to the room with them. And then I was sitting there kissing her, and I was talking to her.
He panicked as he was there trying to help her, crying over her. He heard sounds in the background and screams, and he goes to go see what it is, and it was Ty that went and killed the 2 kids in the bathroom.
My kids, one was in the tub, and one was in the floor. I said, how the did you do it? I grabbed him, I threw him against the wall. And he was like, man, yo, I can't go back. I'm on probation. They saw us, man. You know, we killed them. I was like, no, we killed them, man. We killed my kids. I can't keep talking about it. I don't talk about it no more.
Luis Toledo was blaming Tyshawn Jackson not only for the killing of his children, but for disposing of the bodies. And that Tyshawn Jackson took the bodies away and hid them someplace. and refused to tell Luis where they were. He said, it's better you don't know. But, of course, then Tyshawn Jackson contradicts that. He has just shown up and found an empty car and a lot of stuff that had been put in a dumpster. He doesn't know where the bodies are.
We're in an interview, and he's complaining of stomach issues. He said he hasn't been eating well, everything going on, the stresses and whatnot. So he asked to go to the bathroom. As we stand him up to go to the bathroom, he looks at me and he says, only you. And I was like, okay, all right. I told Sergeant Pagliari hey, maybe he's gonna say something. Maybe this is, where he's gonna just spill the beans, but he doesn't feel comfortable doing it right there. The plan was we were gonna take him to the bathroom, which is right behind the interview rooms. I had a recorder on me, and I was also gonna have the other investigators follow me to where they can stand at the edge of the hallway. They can hear, but he can't see them. We walked around, we went into the bathroom, and he didn't have to go to the bathroom. He sits down on the toilet that was closed, and he's handcuffed. He's looking at me, the door's open, and I'm in the hallway, and Semi's on the toilet facing me. And he's like, hey, where's your recorder? And I was like, why do you need to know where my recorder is? He said, let me see your recorder. So I take my recorder out, and he said, throw it down the hallway. So I tried to be slick. I tried to slide it on the carpet, and of course it catches, rolls, batteries fall out, and we're like, of course. But yet I still had two detectives that were 6 feet away from me in case he tried to do something. I don't know what his state of mind is right now. He knows he killed his wife and 2 kids, so maybe this is an escape attempt. And he asked me if I can take him back to the house. And I was like, what do you want to go back to the house for? I was hoping he was going to tell me, well, I want you to take me there. I'm going to show you where the kids are. So I was like, what do you want me to take you back to the house for? Now I'm talking a little bit louder so the guys can hear me, right? And he's like, no, shh, quiet down. And I was like, okay, why? Why do you want me to go back to the house? And he's like, well, I want you to take me back to the house. You're going to make the cuffs loose. And then when you make the cuffs loose, I'm going to slip out of the cuffs, and then I'm going to make you guys, one of the deputies, kill me. He's like, I want to die where my kids died. And I was like, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. And at this point, I started getting louder again, and I started ending the conversation because he's thinking of suicide. I tell him, hey, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. Just tell me where the bodies are. And he proceeds to say, I'm never going to tell you where the bodies are.
And all of a sudden, this man who says that his friend had disposed of the bodies, and in order to protect him, Luis said, you'll never tell. I'm not going to tell you where the bodies are. You shouldn't know. Luis Toledo himself says, I'll never tell you where the bodies are. Then came that moment that homicide investigators look for, which is that he cracked. He goes into the bathroom again and locks the door. Then he smashes the mirror in the bathroom.
We hear glass breaking. Now inside the bathroom was a sink and a mirror, and so we know probably what he's doing. He's breaking the glass. We need to get in there. What's he gonna do? Is he, the intentions are most likely for him to hurt himself, maybe commit suicide.
The police try to get into the bathroom and they can't break in. Finally, they have to bring some kind of a ram to break holes in the door of the bathroom, use a taser through those doors, finally, to take Luis Toledo down and get him out.
Clearly a suicide attempt. So clearly he had no intention of telling us where they are. He knows where they are, and now he's gonna go in there and he's gonna go to his grave knowing that he is the only person that can ever tell anybody where these people are.
He's getting desperate now. He knows we're onto him. He's thinking suicide. He's looking at all options. So, now we got to start stepping back and start thinking a little bit more about this.
October 2013. Upon being questioned over the disappearance of his wife, Yesenia Suarez, and her 2 young children, Luis Toledo confesses that in a moment of rage following an argument, he unintentionally murdered his wife. But he blames his neighbor, Tyshawn Jackson, for the death of the children and the disappearance of all 3 victims' bodies.
I said, did you do it? I grabbed him and then I threw him against the wall. I was saying, like, killed him, man. He killed my kids.
However, the investigators are not convinced that Tyshawn was involved.
The story that he tells is so bizarre that they sense from the outset that this is all made up.
The story was that he struck the wife, and then Ty was behind him and killed the 2 kids because he didn't want to go back to jail, and it just didn't line up. There was no reason for Ty to kill the kids. Ty was one of the first ones that brought this to the police's attention, so he had no reason to lie. Semi tried to say, well, Ty's a bad guy. He didn't want to go back to jail. This is why he did it.
He was like, man, yo, I can't go back. I'm on probation. They saw us, man. You know we killed them.
But that's the farthest from the truth. Ty was on probation for very, small crimes. He was trying to make something out of himself. He was trying to get back to being a modern citizen, and didn't make sense on why Ty would do any of this. Exactly what his story was is what happened. Toledo, he is very intelligent. He knows the best story is to say what exactly happened, but he's gonna move around who did what to protect himself. So everything he said Ty did, he did. But it was easier for him to tell a story and remember that story by telling the truth, but using somebody else as the actual fall guy.
With the investigators believing that Luis Toledo is the sole perpetrator in this case, he must now face the charges.
Now, the charges he faced were second-degree murder for his wife, but first-degree murder for the children. The thinking was that second-degree murder is a crime a bit more of the moment, not planned out, a crime of passion.
It was a out-of-rage killing. Jealousy led to this.
And the kids heard this, came out, saw what was going on, and that Luis had killed them. The children had nothing to do with it. They were 9 years old and 8 years old. They were born 10 months apart. They were his stepchildren. He'd lived with them. He'd taken them to school. He'd fixed their lunches. And the idea that he had killed them was beyond his ability to acknowledge. His old gang code with the Latin Kings said, never, ever hurt kids.
So if he were to confess to killing the kids, he would be held liable by the Latin Kings, and he would have to deal with it on that side as well as the criminal side.
3 years after the murders, the trial begins.
I had to be there and make justice for my daughter and my grandkids. It was very hard. I try not to even look at him.
We hear from Tyshawn Jackson telling again the story that he had been the fall guy. We heard from Kevin Dredden, who had been the lover of Yesenia, talking about how he had been threatened by Luis himself, that Luis was already prone to this kind of violence and was angered by their relationship. Luis Toledo himself did not take the stand to tell his story. It was left to others. Luis Toledo's defense attorney stuck pretty much to the first version of the story that Luis had told, that yes, he killed his wife in a fit of rage. He was strong, his hands were dangerous, he'd promised he would never use them on her, but he just snapped. Those were the words he used to Tyshawn Jackson too. Just snapped. Clearly there were a lot of hurdles for the prosecution in this. You had a few drops of blood, you had cleaning products, a floor mat of a car, a boot, and that was pretty much it. What do you do with a case like that where you don't even have the bodies? You can't say how they died. You can't really say authoritatively when they died. You can just say that they disappeared.
No victim, no crime. And in here, we didn't have 3 victims. They were missing.
It was really a challenge, but prosecutors turned it around and said that the lack of bodies showed the additional callousness that not only could Luis Toledo kill them, but he could move them somewhere and get rid of them cold-bloodedly. Even though there wasn't much in the way of physical evidence as far as the bodies were concerned, there were the text messages to and from Luis and Yesenia, and to and from Yesenia and Kevin, her lover. And remember that Luis had access to all of this because he'd put spy software in the phone. So the mounting anger and frustration, the questioning of Yesenia, and her response, admitting that she had finally, yes, I had made a mistake. The message with Kevin from the actual day that Luis came to the office, the message between Kevin and Yesenia about when they would be getting together again. All of this was accessible to Luis, and all of it was shown to the jury as well.
I know the judge addressed it once where he's throwing Latin King signs up during court.
Law enforcement noticed it and thought, are these gang signals? Because, of course, he had been in the Latin Kings gang. Was this a signal of where the bodies might be found in order to get rid of them in case anybody did find them and try to bring them in as evidence during the trial? There was really a lot of puzzlement over this. And so law enforcement and other people who know about these things finally deciphered these hand gestures, and they meant, just go ahead, do it. What was Luis Toledo saying with this? Was he saying, just go ahead and convict me? Just go ahead and sentence me to death?
So for trial purposes, what they wanted to do was play all of his interview. Jurors are looking at the entire courtroom. How is the defendant reacting to this, especially when you play the tape of the interview and he goes into detail how he kills his wife and these 2 kids are killed. As a juror, not only am I fixated on what's on the screen, but I also want to turn my attention to the accused. How are they reacting? He sat there emotionless, but you got to consider, is that part of the con? He's the guy that wants you to believe everything he's going to say, that he didn't do anything wrong. He justifies killing the wife because the wife did him wrong. He's a cold-blooded killer.
When the case finally went to the jury, it was about 9:30 in the morning, a jury of 9 women and 3 men. And they deliberated about 8 hours before they delivered their verdict on that same day. And it was guilty on all counts. Second-degree murder in the death of Yesenia Suarez, and first-degree murder in the deaths of Talia and Michael Otto, the children.
Which was a huge win for the prosecution and for everyone that investigated this case, because we didn't have the bodies. Without bodies, it's hard to prove an act. It's especially hard to prove a first-degree murder. And the jury came out and was able to see through his story, and be able to come out with a guilty verdict, thankfully.
In this case, the jury considered, and even though it voted 10-2 in favor of the death penalty, that decision has to be unanimous. And therefore, Luis Toledo was sentenced to life in prison without parole for each of these murders consecutively, not concurrently, to be served one after the other after the other.
Luis Toledo, he is a jealous, possessive who will never tell where those bodies are because he wants to possess them. He enjoys seeing that the family and friends and everyone beside themselves, and that's just his last way of sticking it to Yesenia. He says that he loved her, but he hated her so much. He hated the fact that she cheated on him, that it drove him to this rage where he killed her, killed the kids, and as a last insult to her, he just will never tell anybody where they are.
The search for those children and Yesenia really was uniting the community in a terrible and fearful way. They wanted to find the bodies, but they dreaded finding the bodies. And what was even worse turned out to be not finding the bodies. The family could not believe they were dead. The police were saying they're dead. And the family said, we won't know that without the bodies. They wanted the proof. We often hear that phrase, closure, that people, when their loved ones are believed to be dead, they want the physical evidence to know, and they want to be able to say goodbye to that part of that person that they knew and loved. In this case, there was nothing. In spite of this large hunt, police were there, investigators were there, volunteers were there, news crews were covering this assiduously, and yet nothing ever turned up.
I would love to say to him that, please, just give me my family and let me put them in rest, where they're supposed to be, because some people say, Mavi, they're alive. I said, I know my family is not alive. I just want them home to put them in rest.
Just enjoy our own worries. I miss you forever. Can't forget. The nostalgia is gentle and very gentle. I sincerely wish we could be together. There are times when sadness is like ice and snow, when we parted right. From the moment I fell in love with you, opened my heart, I see life as how I added the remaining half. Complete a life filled with love. I want my love to be like the ocean, like your whole life be endless. When the tide rises, the sea stirs at sea. It's that unique heart. You are like a bright red rose, always fragrant and seductive. I see you coming back in my sleep. The nostalgia is overflowing, it cannot be quenched. The nostalgia is gentle and very gentle. A nostalgia is gentle and very gentle. The nostalgia is gentle and very gentle. The nostalgia is gentle and cannot be quenched.
Past, looking at the body of his wife as she lay there dying.
It's like Sean was like, what the I was like, Sean, she's dying, man. Yo, help me, bro. He was just dead stuck, like he didn't know what to do. So I was like, yo, she's around. I said, no, Ty, she's dead, man. She's dead. Then the kids came out because of the noise. And I was like, yo, take him, bro. Move him, please, get him out of here. Because I didn't want them to see, you know. And then my daughter was like, hey, what do you guys do with my mom? And Sean just went back to the room with them. And then I was sitting there kissing her, and I was talking to her.
He panicked as he was there trying to help her, crying over her. He heard sounds in the background and screams, and he goes to go see what it is, and it was Ty that went and killed the two kids in the bathroom.
My kids, one was in the tub, and one was in the floor. I said, what the did you do? And I grabbed him, I threw him against the wall. And he was like, man, yo, I can't go back. I'm on probation. They saw us, man. You know, we killed them. I was like, no, we killed them, man. We killed my kids. I can't keep talking about it. I don't talk about it no more.
Luis Toledo was blaming Tyshawn Jackson not only for the killing of his children, but for disposing of the bodies. And that Tyshawn Jackson took the bodies away and hid them someplace and refused to tell Luis where they were. He said, it's better you don't know. But, of course, then Tyshawn Jackson contradicts that. He has just shown up and found an empty car and a lot of stuff that had been put in a dumpster. He doesn't know where the bodies are.
We're in an interview, and he's complaining of stomach issues. He said he hasn't been eating well, everything going on, the stresses and whatnot. So he asked to go to the bathroom. As we stand him up to go to the bathroom, he looks at me and he says, only you. And I was like, okay, all right. I told Sergeant Pagliari hey, maybe he's going to say something. Maybe this is, you know, where he's going to just spill the beans, but he doesn't feel comfortable doing it right there. The plan was we were going to take him to the bathroom, which is right behind the interview rooms. I had a recorder on me, and I was also going to have the other investigators follow me to where they can stand at the edge of the hallway. They can hear, but he can't see them. We walked around, we went into the bathroom, and he didn't have to go to the bathroom. He sits down on the toilet that was closed, and he's handcuffed. He's looking at me, the door's open, and I'm in the hallway, and Semi's on the toilet facing me. And he's like, hey, where's your recorder? And I was like, why do you need to know where my recorder is? He said, let me see your recorder. So I take my recorder out, and he said, throw it down the hallway. So I tried to be slick. I tried to slide it on the carpet, and of course it catches, rolls, batteries fall out, and we're like, of course. But yet I still had two detectives that were 6 feet away from me in case he tried to do something. I don't know what his state of mind is right now. He knows he killed his wife and two kids, so maybe this is an escape attempt. And he asked me if I can take him back to the house. And I was like, what do you want to go back to the house for? I was hoping he was going to tell me, well, I want you to take me there. I'm going to show you where the kids are. So I was like, what do you want me to take you back to the house for? Now I'm talking a little bit louder so the guys can hear me, right? And he's like, no, shh, quiet down. And I was like, okay, why? Why do you want me to go back to the house? And he's like, well, I want you to take me back to the house. You're gonna make the cuffs loose. And then when you make the cuffs loose, I'm gonna slip out of the cuffs, and then I'm gonna make you guys, one of the deputies, kill me. He's like, I wanna die where my kids died. And I was like, that's not gonna happen. That's not gonna happen. And at this point, I started getting louder again, and I started ending the conversation because he's thinking of suicide. I tell him, hey, that's not gonna happen. That's not gonna happen. Just tell me where the bodies are. And he proceeds to say, I'm never gonna tell you where the bodies are.
And all of a sudden, this man who says that his friend had disposed of the body.
Mark Tildesley set off for the local fair alone, as he had done many times before. The last time he was seen there was standing just outside the Dodgems. From then, it's anyone's guess.
Whoever's got Mark, will they please bring him home?
The naked body of 14-year-old Jason Swift was found in a shallow grave in the Essex countryside. The crucial evidence linking the murders of Jason Swift and Barry Lewis is the traces of a tranquilizing drug found in both their bodies.
I started to hear about this dirty dozen, about paedophile gang from London, and you just think this just gets worse.
The central role that was played by Sidney Cook became much clearer. He was a very influential, if not the leader. The police's interest in Sidney Cook led them to question him while he was on remand at Brixton Prison.
There are all sorts of villains. In my opinion, the worst are those who do bad things to children. This has got to be solved, and solved quickly.
Say no to strangers.
Not one of these.
Come on, jump in.
There's nothing more precious than a child. The circumstances are horrific.
He was abducted. I'm sure he must have been.
Police were uncovering something that was truly horrific.
These people were the vermin of society.
Evil, sick, twisted, they're nothing else.
Dirty perverts who get involved with children.
You've gone the wrong way. You're supposed to go down that way.
It's all right, love. We've taken a shortcut.
We were in the business of saving children's lives.
You cannot emphasise the danger that guy was in.
There is wickedness in this world. Some people are evil.
Sorry. Thought I was going to be all right, yeah?
The 28th, 29th of July, probably the two most important days of the whole inquiry. I interviewed Sidney Cook. Even then, with all of the problems he was facing, being accused of an absolutely horrific offence, he still wanted to be in charge and be the governor.
My name is John Nutting. I became a barrister in 1968. Sidney Cook was a man who was perfectly capable of confessing a crime and then saying that he made it up to impress the officers. He was a dreadful fantasist, one of the most manipulative men I've ever known. I know that the officers who interviewed him, Mr. Bright from the Essex Police, found the task of getting a truthful account out of Sidney Cook about anything extremely difficult.
He initially, over quite a lengthy interview, denied any involvement.
When he's in his own territory, he takes over the conversation and he will bore you to death. But get him talking about fairgrounds, he knows everything about them. He likes to control the situation, so you've got to play to his ego a little bit just to keep him talking. He was not legally represented and did not want to be legally represented. He could handle it himself. But he then gave in and he had his Salvation Army minister. When he came, I'd said to him, you're going to hear things here possibly that nobody should really hear. I knew it was going to be grim to hear and sit through. When we finished with Cook, he said that was the worst day of his life. And that stuck with me. Cook, slowly but surely, starts to make admissions of his involvement with Jason. It was horrific. What he said, I'll say no more than that. It was horrific.
They asked him to show them what had happened to the boy, and Cook actually laid down on the floor of the interview room to demonstrate what had happened. He didn't take any responsibility for the death of Jason and actually tried to shift the blame. But the police were quite clearly getting to the heart of the matter.
Jason Swift was 14 years old when he died. He had been grossly abused and finally suffocated in a squalid council flat in East London in November 1985.
Mum thought he was with his sister, and sister thought he was with Mum. But he was with Sidney Cook and others who associate with Cook. Jason was with Cook and others travelling round. He certainly came to Southend-on-Sea. He went to Brighton, and we know that because he sent his mum cards from both locations.
He was preyed on by these sick, twisted people. They watched and they followed, and they could see that he wasn't going back anywhere. They literally groomed him, knew he was vulnerable, and preyed on him. I ain't gonna lie, it gave me nightmares.
I was junior Treasury Counsel during the course of the Jason Swift trial. The Old Bailey is the most famous criminal court in the world. It has existed for several centuries, concerned only with the most serious cases. In cases involving the sort of degree of horror which was involved in the death of Jason Swift, it is absolutely essential to play down the emotional content and do nothing to prevent the jury from focusing on the evidence in the case.
It was a long trial, and every day sitting up there at the courtroom was Jason's mum. How did Jason's mum feel? Awful, awful.
They were smirking at my uncle. And I thought, who would do that? You just took a child away, and now you're smirking at the parents and the family.
As the four men waited in the dock, the judge warned them that he was going to pass extremely long sentences due to the truly terrible nature of the attack on Jason Swift. Mr. Justice McCulloch said he had also taken into account the sense of public outrage at what these four had done, and said he found it difficult to remember a worse case of manslaughter.
They were not charged with his murder, but they were convicted of manslaughter and sexual crimes. The prosecution felt that they could not determine who actually had killed Jason.
Cook, as the ringleader, got the 19 years. Oliver and Bailey, 15-year sentences. And Stephen Barrell was 13 and a half years.
Bearing in mind what they all said in interview, which formed the basis of most of the evidence against each one of them, it would be extremely difficult for the jury to pick through the interviews and justify finding one of them guilty of murder and another guilty of manslaughter.
These people are maniacs, real maniacs. You know, there's no getting away from it, they're maniacs. Words fail me, really, at what they are. I mean, he was only 14 years old.
I was absolutely unhappy, putting it politely, that they only got done for manslaughter. They know they've done it, they're smirking at everyone. Notorious, evil, sick, twisted. That's what comes to mind when I hear their names. Because they're nothing else.
The details of Jason's killing were so horrific that many of those in the public gallery wept when they were read out. Police officers who worked on the case found it profoundly disturbing.
This is absolutely appalling. I mean, people who can literally hold the boy down, torture him to death for their own sexual gratification must be extremely depraved. I can't think of a worse type of person, to be honest with you. I mean, it leaves a marked impression on you. It's bound to. I mean, I've been a police officer for over 20 years, and this has definitely left a marked impression upon me.
After the trial, we needed to push on with the investigation, which was much bigger than just Jason Swift inquiry.
Everybody wants to get the piece, that piece of the jigsaw that's missing, to make the complete picture.
Although Jason's killers were now behind bars, police knew that they still had some distance to travel before they could solve the cases of Barry Lewis and Mark Tilsley. They were clear in their minds that this gang was responsible in some way, but just could not get the evidence that was required to secure a conviction. Until the police had achieved a major breakthrough.
Keep away from people you don't know, from strangers.
Hello, young lady. You going home? Oh, look, it's a bit chilly, isn't it? Why don't you hop in and I'll give you a lift back, eh? You know that little field just off the road? Well, there's a sweet little baby donkey there. Only born last night. I'd like to see it on the way home.
Yes, please. Most people are good and kind. But there are some who want to hurt children.
The the disappearance and the killing of children in whatever circumstances always made headline news. In the 1980s, there seemed to be a number of horrific cases across the country. However, the mention of paedophiles really was quite difficult for the media at that time. There was a reluctance to sort of accept the enormity of what was going on.
After the Jason Swift conclusion, to complete the job in hand, you'd need to solve the Baroness and the Mark Tilsley one. I remember a prominent doctor telling me that there was no cure for this paedophile obsession, and he said to me that the best course of action was for them to be put behind bars.
Leslie Bailey was serving his sentence in Wandsworth, along with Sidney Cook and Robert Oliver. Ian Gabb was a prisoner in Wandsworth Prison. Gabb had come forward to say his cellmate, Leslie Bailey, had confessed to him about the killings of a number of boys. There was sufficient credibility given to Ian Gabb's secret reporting from his conversations with Leslie Bailey that the police launched a new operation called Operation Orchid, and it was decided that Gabb could be used as an informant.
This triggered an opportunity to gain evidence. We needed to concoct a scam where we could go into the prison regularly and not draw attention unnecessarily. So I decided that I would masquerade as a vicar. It needed to be covert. The story was that he'd seen God and seen the light. Instead he saw me with all the various accoutrements that you should need: Bibles, dog collar, even down to the car that I was driving to the prison. Did this with the agreement of the prison governor. He said to me at the time, if this comes out, he said, and they find out what we're doing, he said, both your head and mine will end up on spikes outside the prison gates. You're entering into the unknown, doing the unknown that hadn't been done before. It was a bold move at the time, and I don't regret doing it. You have to think outside the box.
Okay, well, thanks very much for your help.
Detectives have been working to try to uncover the full story of the Hackney child sex ring responsible for the torture and murder of young boys. Detectives believe at least another 6 boys may have been abused and murdered by the ring.
This was on a different level. This was not an isolated case. And that is why it was important for the police to keep up media interest.
We have information which indicates there are other children who have been reported missing for a number of years, and we have names, first names only, of some persons who are alleged to have been the victims of a particular gang of paedophiles.
At the time, journalists with very good contacts within the police would perhaps pick up pieces of information that the police had no objection to being leaked out if it felt as though it were in the investigation's interests.
Now, after further information from serving prisoners, detectives running the investigation, codenamed Orchid, are planning further charges.
The police believed with a great deal of justification that others and all members of the same gang were involved. They were quite happy to make it known that Bailey had spilled the beans and was implicating everyone, and that was to put pressure on the other members of the gang. They decided to deploy Gab to share a cell with Cook and with Robert Oliver to amass further information. Gab had secretly recorded in a notebook, and this information was passed on to Scotland Yard from the prison. It was an extraordinary risk, but it was a task that Ian Gabb, despite his own background and difficulties, warmed to and produced a considerable amount of very, very useful intelligence.
The most dangerous person then is the informant. He's putting himself at physical harm or even worse. Other inmates would probably turn against him because inside they don't like informants. You will find that some prisoners will knock 7 bells out of them with what they've done. You cannot emphasise the danger that guy was in.
Gab's interest in helping us was probably twofold. One was the dislike for what Oliver had been involved in, and secondly, he thought that he'd probably do himself a bit of good by being helpful.
Analyse what's said by Oliver, by Bailey, by Cook, and there might be something, a thread that links all 3 of those together. The evidence or the information he passed over could be later alleged to be totally false, make up for a variety of reasons, but at least it would give the police a starter. And if you work on the information, it's amazing what other facts you can turn up in pieces of evidence, and that makes your case stronger.
It became abundantly clear that Gab was unearthing very, very valuable information. They confessed to the sexual abuse and indeed the killing of a number of boys, and 2 names were mentioned in these discussions: Barry Lewis and Mark Tildesley.
Leslie Bailey made various admissions to his cellmate regarding Barry Lewis and Mark Tildesley. There was enough there for Bailey to be interviewed.
Leslie Bailey was re-interviewed in relation to the death of Barry Lewis. The detectives at the time didn't really know what to expect. These type of interviews were always full of surprises. Often the suspects would deny everything for hours and hours and hours. And other times they would just casually confess to something. In this new interview with Leslie Bailey, he confessed that he was involved in the killing and the disposal of the body of Barry Lewis. The young boy had been given sweets by Sidney Cook as they abducted him off the street in South London and taken to the Kingsmead estate, where he was abused and drugged. The events at the Kingsmead estate, it was an absolutely disgusting crime on an innocent and a very, very scared young boy. A witness had come forward to say that they had seen a man with a child who looked unwell at a petrol station in the area where Barry's body was finally discovered. When police interviewed Bailey for the second time, they asked him to take them to the burial site, and again he took them right to the spot where Barry had been found. Leslie Bailey was soon after charged with the murder of Barry Lewis, subsequently convicted, and was sentenced to life imprisonment.
By the time of the trial of Barry Lewis, I was a senior Treasury counsel. It's quite usual for the Crown Prosecution Service to make use of the services of the same counsel in a continuing police investigation. I used to try and ensure that the family of any victim was spared the details wherever possible. I would invite a police officer to tell the family that the opening would be deeply distressing to any relative of the victim. Let's remind ourselves, Barry Lewis was 6, and the assaults on him rendered it a crime of absolute horror.
It's now around 6 years since Mark Tildesley disappeared from that fairground in Wokingham. Bailey provided a credible and horrific detail of Mark's final moments. He told police that he had travelled down from London to Wokingham, where Sidney Cook was waiting. Cook had befriended and corrupted Mark Tildesley. He had been bribed with sweets. He had been promised a ride on the Dodgems with Cook. He had been taken to a caravan on the edge of town where he was abused by the group after being drugged with a spiked milk drink. Sidney Cook was the sleeping man, of that there is no doubt, who had been seen in Wokingham that day.
There's a side of me that almost wishes I didn't know what happened to Mark, because I cannot imagine what Mark would have felt in his last few minutes. It's truly horrific what these people have done.
It sent shivers down your spine. It's unthinkable to do that to a 7-year-old child, to lose a friend in such a way.
It was very much a shock. I think that was one of the only times I'd ever seen Mark's brother cry. It was when he found out what had happened to his little brother.
The confession of Leslie Bailey to the killing of Mark Tildesley took the police 90% of the way there, but they needed more. There were 2 crucial developments in that re-investigation of the Mark Tilsley disappearance. One, Sidney Cook's alibi was proven to be false. A re-examination of the records showed that he in fact was not working at another fairground in London on the day that Mark Tilsley had gone missing. And secondly, police had questioned the man who had taken possession of Sidney Cook's blue Jaguar car, and he recalled seeing a plastic Tiger keyring with broken feet in that car during the time that he was the owner. That keyring belonged to Mark Tilsley. Cook denied murdering Mark Tilsley. He denied murdering Barry Lewis. Once again, he showed that he took great pleasure in recounting his despicable behaviour with children over many, many years. This was typical of Cook and typical of other members of this gang who revelled in the misery that they had inflicted on people. Detectives all believed that the evidence showed who did it, who was involved, and how it came to pass. And they were extremely frustrated that the prosecution authorities at that time felt that some of the evidence was insufficient to take the case all the way through court.
Serial child killer Leslie Bailey, a former rent boy who fell in with a paedophile ring dubbed the Dirty Dozen. Before today's conviction at Reading Crown Court, he was already serving time for the manslaughter of 2 other boys. Mark Tilsley's fate was revealed by Bailey in a prison cell confession.
Leslie Bailey pleaded guilty to the manslaughter of Mark Tilsley and received 2 more life sentences in addition to the sentences he had already received for the deaths of Barry Lewis and Jason Swift. One notable name missing from the charge sheet in the cases of Barry Lewis and Mark Tilsley was Sidney Cook. The prosecution authorities were reluctant to rely on the evidence of one paedophile against another, given the unreliability of them as witnesses rather than suspects.
In relation to Cook, there was a certain amount of circumstantial evidence that he was at Wokingham at the relevant time and was seen with Mark Tilsley. But the only evidence to associate him with Mark Tilsley's death was what Leslie Bailey said. And Leslie Bailey was not a man who the prosecution could conceivably call as a witness of accuracy and truth. His interviews were contrary, conflicting, and extremely confused. He was simply not somebody who the Crown could offer as a witness against any defendant. Sidney Cook certainly got away with not being prosecuted in respect of Barry Lewis's death. He also got away with not being prosecuted in respect of Mark Tilsley's death. I don't think that you can say that justice is achieved if men are not convicted of crime who've participated in crime.
40-year-old Leslie Bailey was a member of a paedophile ring once described by police as perversion in the ultimate. He was serving life in Whitemoor for his part in 3 murders, including that of 7-year-old Mark Tilsley. Mark's father said today he had no regrets at Bailey's death.
No, he got his just desserts. And if I hadn't found out who the bloke who strangled him, I'd shake hands with him.
When child killer Robert Oliver decided to head for Brighton, Sussex police had just a few hours to prepare. They put him under surveillance and discovered him visiting arcades and children's libraries, but were powerless to act because he didn't actually offend. Campaigners believe he's likely to want to join up with Sidney Cook when he's released from jail.
Staggeringly, Sidney Cook was released in 1998.
The aftermath of last night's riot. 12 arrests, 4 police officers hurt. A demonstration against Sidney Cook degenerated into thugs throwing petrol bombs and bricks. Cook has been under police protection somewhere in the West Country since he was released from prison.
There was a very real anxiety that if Sidney Cook were released, he might well return to the sort of activity that had resulted in the death of Jason Swift, Mark Tilsley and Barry Lewis. Cook must never repeat these offences with other children.
Britain's most notorious child killer. On Monday, he'll be free and on the streets.
Campaigners gathered in quiet vigil outside Wandsworth Prison tonight, angered by the release of paedophile Sidney Cook. They say he's still a threat to children and could re-offend.
Of course they're going to come out halfway through. Good behaviour. Justice is not getting served for people who take lives away. It wasn't served at all.
The object of any punishment in cases like this is not only punishment of the guilty, but also preventative.
Those who interfere and abuse children, they almost speak a different language. Their one interest is children and sex with children. And they have a means of communicating with each other, and they trade children. They pass on children. What do you do with these people? And what do you do with them? Well, in his case, it worked out very well because he ended up being back at court again.
Thankfully, he was charged with historic sex crimes and was sent back to prison, where he remains to this day.
The fact that Cook was sent to prison for life is some compensation, to me at least, for the fact that justice was not done in the case of Barry Lewis and Mark Tilsley. Cook got his just desserts.
Barry Lewis and Mark Tilsley, as far as you could say, was satisfactorily concluded, but whether others remained unresolved and undetected is a matter for conjecture. If you look at it on a worldwide basis, this sort of thing will continue to carry on.
The gang has been linked to paedophile networks. Police uncovered this web of abuse taking place on a very widespread scale. In London, across the UK, in Europe. It is beyond doubt that the deaths of the 3 boys is not the end of the story.
8-year-old Vishal Malhotra had vanished while going to buy sweets near his home in Putney. Vishal's partial remains were found in a shallow grave in a field in rural Sussex. No one has ever been charged in connection with his death.
It raises further questions about potential links between Vishal's death and the killings carried out by Sidney Cook's gang.
The gang that was responsible for the deaths of Jason Swift, Barry Lewis and Mark Tildesley were linked to the disappearance of other boys. The evidence against them in some of these cases is reasonably strong. In other cases, less so.
Detectives are convinced at least one boy, and probably many more, were abused at these blocks of flats. Dolphin Square is close to Westminster, and over the years, many MPs have lived here. This is just part of a much bigger investigation into historical sex abuse, which began with inquiries at Elm House, a former B&B in South London.
When cases like these emerge, it's inevitable that conspiracy theories will surround them in many ways. Rumours existed of paedophile gangs being linked to establishment figures, people in positions of power, but there is just not the evidence to support that.
Visiting Jason's grave was heartbreaking. Joan's now been laid to rest with her son Jason, and they're together again now. It's heartbreaking because he's gone out and he's never come back.
I remember Mark every time I drive to Wokingham. It's 3 miles from here. That's where I played with him. That's where he was taken. There's not a day I go into Wokingham that I don't think of Mark.
And what really is the most horrible thing, I think, in the whole thing is that Mark's body has never been found. That was the last day anyone ever saw Mark.
Chris and I became a couple in 1989. He had a stroke in 2015. A very severe stroke that's left him bedbound. He can't talk now much because of the stroke. And he just wants closure to find out where his brother is. We throw a few letters to Sidney Cook over the years, but he won't disclose where Mark is. Hopefully we can find Mark and find his body before anything happens to Chris. To know that Mark has been buried with his mum and dad.
Sidney Cook inflicted pain and suffering on families without a second thought. Despite the fact that he will never be released from prison, has consistently refused to end the suffering of the Tildesley family and reveal where that boy's body was buried. And that indicates an evil person.
I was in no doubt that if we hadn't secured the convictions we did against those people, they would have gone on and killed other children. After 40 years, so dig this up is really quite difficult. I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about it now, which I'd rather not do.
Jason was lured into what he did. The little 6-year-old boy, Barry Lewis, who was taken off the streets, Sidney Cook, he's in the right place. And lots of children are safer for that fact.
Having practiced at the criminal bar for 40 years, I have absolutely no doubt that some people are evil. Whether they're born evil or whether they become evil, I don't think that Cook is a person of lesser evil than Ian Brady and Myra Hindley were. There is wickedness in this world.
Xin chào tất cả các bạn, hôm nay mình sẽ trình bày cho các bạn một nhạc phẩm của nhạc sĩ Trịnh Công Sơn, bài Để Gió Cuốn Đi. Sống trong đời sống cần có một tấm lòng, để làm gì em biết không? Để gió cuốn đi, để gió cuốn đi, gió cuốn đi cho mây qua dòng sông. Ngày vừa lên hay đêm xuống mênh mông, ôi trái tim đang bay theo thời gian, làm chiếc bóng đi giao lời dối gian. Nhưng khi chiều tới cần có một tiếng cười, để lòng ngồi theo lá bay, rồi nước cuốn trôi, rồi nước cuốn trôi. Hãy nghiêng đời xuống nhìn suốt một mối tình, chỉ lặng nhìn không nói năng, để buốt trái tim, để buốt trái tim. Trong trái tim con chim đau nằm yên, ngủ dài lâu mang theo vết thương sâu. Một sớm mai chim bay đi triền miên, và tiếng hát tan trong trời gió lên. Hãy yêu ngày tới dù qua mệt kiếp người, còn cuộc đời ta cứ vui, dù vắng bóng ai, dù vắng bóng ai, dù vắng bóng ai. Sống trong đời sống cần có một tấm lòng, để làm gì em biết không? Để gió cuốn đi, để gió cuốn đi, gió cuốn đi cho mây qua dòng sông. Ngày vừa lên hay đêm xuống mênh mông, ôi trái tim đang bay theo thời gian, làm chiếc bóng đi giao lời dối gian. Nhưng khi chiều tới cần có một tiếng cười, để ngậm ngùi theo lá mây, rồi nước cuốn trôi, rồi nước cuốn trôi. Hãy nghiêng đời xuống nhìn suốt một mối tình, chỉ lặng nhìn không nói năng, để buốt trái tim, để buốt trái tim. Trong trái tim con chim đau nằm yên, ngủ dài lâu mang theo vết thương sâu. Một sớm mai chim bay đi triền miên, và tiếng hát
trời gió lên, thấy nhiều ngày tới dù quá mệt kiếp người, còn cuộc đời ta cứ vui dù vắng bóng ai, dù vắng bóng ai.